My entitled boyfriend literally eats the entire turkey at our Thanksgiving dinner that my family was hosting, leaving me in a state of shock that caused us to have a massive argument, leading to me finding out that this guy's been cheating on me the entire time. And right now, I'm honestly blown away and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what's happening. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 2 years and living together for 6 months now. I met him through my friend at a house party and we immediately hit it off. He was almost exactly a guy I wanted. Extremely tall and huge, witty with jokes, he was kind and he was well dressed. And he was absolutely buff. We vibed throughout the party and exchanged numbers at the end, and he has met my family a couple of times after we moved in together, and they absolutely loved him. My grandparents host Thanksgiving dinner almost every year, and we were both invited to it. I thought it would have been lovely to make him meet with them and my other family members too, since my uncle's family would be there as well. He had to drop his sister off at his parents' house, which is a 2-hour drive away, and then pick me up from my house. Everyone was happy to meet him, and it seemed like they really liked him. That is, until we sat down for dinner. We said our grace and Grandpa carved the turkey and started passing it around the table. Now, this was a regular-sized turkey, just like what we always have every Thanksgiving dinner, which was enough to feed like 12 people and still have leftovers. Both of us were sitting at the end of the table next to Grandpa, so my boyfriend was the last one to get it. There was still a lot of it left because everyone took only a little bit and would pass around again for more after some time. Well, he placed it right next to him and started digging through the entirety of it. And as my nephew said later, he basically gobbled it up. I told him quietly to go easy, but he did not listen. He started saying how good it was, and my grandma just had a huge smile on her face. He was eating just the turkey, and my grandpa said, "Boy, someone really likes turkey." And yeah, everybody laughed, but it got to a point where everybody was talking about it. But the entire time, he did not take any hint and just kind of shrugged it off like a teenager. My face at this point turned red from embarrassment, and I could see everybody judging us so hard. I could hear my uncle and his wife making unfunny jokes about it. Well, it was eventually polished off by my boyfriend without anybody getting any more. And yeah, of course, there were no leftovers. Now, my boyfriend is a gym freak. He spends a ridiculous amount of time and money on working out, eating protein-rich meals, online courses, etc. He has a set protein limit that he hits every day, and sometimes he goes over it, but he's never under. He also gets his protein from just the meals, no supplements. So he is used to having large meals. It has never been a problem with me, and I respect his way of living, if not love it. We cook together all the time, and if I'm not in the mood, he happily makes a meal for me. He won't even let me contribute in grocery expenses. Because of him, I started eating healthy and felt a lot better about my lifestyle. Well, after dinner, we got into a fight while driving home. He said he had been driving all day and didn't eat anything after breakfast, so he had to hit his protein, as he put it, and that he wasn't enjoying it after some time, and that he had just shoved it down his throat to get it down. But I said if he was that hungry, I would have happily made him a meal after we had gotten home, but now everyone in my family is going to talk about how you finished something that was made for the whole family. And this is where he said that he thought everybody took their share. And it's like, what? He then got mad and said I'm blowing this out of proportion and overreacting over a simple meal. But I snapped back at him saying, how am I overreacting if I am just trying to communicate about what he did? It was an hour-long drive, so things really got heated up. He kept saying that I'm calling him a pig for eating like that and should probably just get out of his life if it's such a problem because he believes he did nothing wrong and isn't going to change himself. He persisted on it even though that wasn't my point. It got so bad that he dropped me off at a gas station in the middle of the night and said, think about what I just did. And honestly, I was terrified. So I collected myself to call an Uber to my sister's house and I sobbed the entire night. I told myself after a week things would get clear. But you know what? He hasn't texted me and I haven't texted him either. Now I can see how I could have reacted differently, but I can't get myself over the fact that he just left me stranded in the middle of the night. So seriously, am I overreacting here, or is this honestly even my fault in the first place? Because at this point, I don't know what to do. Before we go any further, the original poster has an update that they would like to share. Here's what they had to say. First off, I want to say thank you to everybody who commented. I honestly did not expect that many reactions. It really helped me to hear other perspectives and see how naive I was. So here's the update that happened. I called him up to talk about what happened, and the call was answered by a woman whose voice I did not recognize. And no, it wasn't his sister. I know her voice really well. When I asked if I could talk to him, she replied by saying, "He's in a cardio session. I'll tell him to call you later." And I gotta be honest, I was puzzled after this. So I waited for his call, imagining all the worst things, and it turned out to be completely right. He was cheating on me. He told me that he had been seeing her for a couple of months and that she works as a coach in the gym that he goes to. I searched her up on Instagram and she is a fitness influencer with a lot of followers. He said she's a better match for him and will help him grow his career on social media. Plus, he said that she had a much better body than mine. When asked why he didn't tell me earlier and ended things was right there, he said he knew I would overreact and act emotionally immature like I'm doing right now and wouldn't understand him. Then he told me he's packed my things in boxes and kept them in a garage and told me to collect it or not, saying that he didn't care and then ended the call. Well, when that happened, I started sobbing uncontrollably. My sister was beside me and comforted me, and she said that his fitness influencer girlfriend might not even know that he had been dating, and he is running after her followers and not her. I started saying that he couldn't do that, and she replied that I'm in denial, and he probably saw the opportunity on the Thanksgiving argument and just got rid of me, making me think I was the one that caused the end of our relationship. Well, I'm taking my sister and her boyfriend to collect my things this week and probably get some kind of closure, because this entire situation is really crazy. Okay, this is some insane behavior. First and foremost, you didn't do anything wrong. Your ex-boyfriend is a psychopath, and that guy is a huge pig. I'll go ahead and say it. Like, what is going on right now? First off, if you're gonna be going to someone's Thanksgiving dinner, don't eat the whole turkey in one go. Like, are you crazy? This guy's got some serious problems. That is like so rude, it's not even funny. And in retrospect, it kind of like explains why he did that, because clearly he was trying to ruin the relationship. He went in there and said, oh, I'm gonna eat this entire turkey and make her look crazy, and then I'm gonna kick her out of the car as soon as she starts to argue about it. Like, this guy's the root cause of this entire relationship going south, not you. Like, you literally didn't do anything wrong. But it just really sucks that this guy was actively cheating on you probably the entirety of your relationship. Like, I'm willing to bet this guy was just going behind your back, and it finally hit like a breaking point where he was feeling guilty and he didn't know how to cut you loose besides doing it violently. Like, trust me, this guy's a piece of garbage and you could do way better than this idiot. But in my opinion, the fact that he left you at that gas station says everything that you need to know about this guy. He clearly did not care about your safety at all. That is so sketchy and scary, it's not even funny. Like, good lord, it's the middle of the night and you're at a gas station you don't know, and suddenly you're expected to like figure out how you're gonna get home. Like, dude, what's happening? This guy is a massive piece of garbage, and honestly, I'm kind of glad that you're away from him. So I'm so sorry that this happened, but honestly, the silver lining here is that you don't have to deal with a cheater, because I guarantee you he's probably just gonna do this again in the future, and when his current relationship blows up in his face, trust me, it will absolutely be his fault. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I overreacting for being pissed off after a coworker secretly recorded me working out? Because right now I feel like I'm being made fun of and mocked at work, and at this point I really just don't know if I'm in the wrong. Here's what's going on. Okay, to give a little bit of context, I'm really overweight, so I'm very self-conscious about going to the gym and doing certain exercises. I was doing calisthenics for a bit, but I didn't want to go to the gym because it was super embarrassing. I did burpees, I did skipping, push-ups, jumping jacks, etc. I used to run with a pack on to a secret location in the forest near me just to do my exercises, and then I would run home. It would take me like 2 hours to run and do the exercises in total. Well, I guess someone from work saw me and recorded a video of me doing burpees. They were showing the video to people at work even. Then I went into the gym, and for reference, I live on a military base, but I'm not in the military, and there was a sign on the running track with my last name saying that I should do 1,000 burpees. Like, seriously, what in the world do I do with that? Like, why can't these losers just mind their own business? So am I overreacting for being pissed off at this? Because I honestly don't know what to do. Okay, in my opinion, I don't care if it's in public or not. If someone's secretly recording you without your consent, whether they're allowed to or not, I absolutely am going to freak out, and so should you. Because clearly they're trying to do it maliciously to make you look bad. Here you are trying to like change your life and improve your life by, you know, losing weight and getting in better shape, and yet they're over here making fun of you and showing pretty much everybody the fact that you're exercising, as if that's any of their business. And you can bet them signing you up for something is absolutely their way of mocking you. So if I was in your shoes, I would go to like human resources or some kind of upper management and identify exactly who did it to you. I would check in with people through word of mouth or like find somebody who's seen the video and identify exactly who did this so you can complain, because what they did is completely unacceptable, and it's really toxic they would try to fat shame you in this kind of way. My entitled friend basically implies that she wants me to give up my tickets to a concert we were going to see so that she can give it to one of her friends and go with them instead. So I decided to get some revenge by literally just reselling the tickets, leaving my friend high and dry and showing them that, yeah, I do know what you're trying to do right now. Here's what happened. So I bought tickets to a really desirable concert with my cousin for about $200 each back in February. I've been looking forward to this concert all year. A couple weeks ago, my cousin told me that she couldn't go anymore and that I can keep her ticket and invite a friend. Even though she she paid $200 for her ticket already, she said that she didn't want her money back and that any friend I invited can go for free. So I invite a friend of mine to go with me and she says yes. She's excited she can go and is grateful she got the ticket for free. The day of the concert is coming up in 4 days and she texts me to let me know it's forecast to snow the day of the concert and it will be super cold and windy with wind chills down to 0. I then check the weather apps and decide to listen to the local news forecast on the TV and it doesn't look good. I then tell my friend that I don't drive in the snow and I can't really take the train because the outdoor temperature will be so low, and in my area I sometimes have to wait for the train outside for like 20 minutes or so, and I just don't feel comfortable being exposed to the cold for that long. I also can't Uber to the stadium because round trip would be too expensive, so I tell her if the weather is bad that day, I will just transfer the tickets to her and she can go without me. She then starts pressuring me to let her know ahead of time so she is not scrambling at the last minute. I told her that snow and weather predictions are pretty variable in our area, and I can't really decide until the day of when I get a feel for how much snow has fallen, as well as see the condition of the roads and how bad the wind and the wind chill is. Now for reference, she lives very close to the venue, so it will be easy for her to get there, even if the weather is bad. Well, she again says that the right thing to do is to let her know a couple of days ahead of time so she can find someone else to go with, but it's really making me uncomfortable that she's already planning to go with someone else right before the snow even hits the ground. She has a friend she usually goes to concerts with who also lives near her, so I knew in her beady little brain that she's obviously planning a concert outing with her other friend and just wants me to transfer the tickets now instead of waiting for the actual weather event. I think about it for a second and I tell her that I've decided ahead of time that since the weather will be bad, I'm just going to list my tickets for resale and try to get my money back since I can't go. And she responds back by saying, wow. So I replied back by saying, oh, did you expect me to transfer $400 worth of tickets to you before the snow even hits the ground? Or do you want to buy the tickets yourself? And of course, she didn't respond. But even if the tickets don't sell, I'm not going to give them to her anyways because honestly, I don't think she deserves them. Yeah, from the sounds of it, this friend was clearly hoping you would back out so they could bring someone else along. And that is honestly super toxic, and I would really hate to be friends with someone like that because, dude, come on. Like, they really wanted you to call it and basically just give her the tickets so she can go with someone else. So I love the fact that you decided to, like, sell the tickets instead, especially because your friend was being really weird, and in my opinion, they didn't deserve to get the tickets. My coworkers were constantly leaving their garbage on my desk and bumping into my chair anytime they cut through my workspace. So I decided to get some very petty revenge, where I started to intentionally back my chair into them anytime they crossed through my area, resulting in some very bruised ankles. Here's what happened. Many years ago, I had a corner desk near the door. Coworkers would regularly put their drinks on my desk on their way to the restroom and then pick them up on their way back. After asking them not to do that, I put an extra wastebasket at the end of my desk and started tossing their drinks in it, and they were often genuinely surprised to find no drink when they came back through. But I just apologized and I told them that I didn't know who left their trash on my desk, but I needed my desk space just so I could work. They also bumped into my chair while cutting through my work area. These things would happen multiple times a day, and it was always the same handful of people. It was so bad that if I were to roll my chair back 6 inches, I would accidentally run into them. So that's exactly what I started doing. When I had to get a file from the side drawer, I would roll my chair back and turn sideways to get the files. I decided that I needed a file pretty much every time someone was cutting through my workspace. It took a few times, but the worst offender soon stopped after a few interactions between their ankles and my chair legs. I would always profusely apologize and ask if they were okay. I would offer to help them get back to their desk and write an accident report, etc. Nobody was ever seriously injured, but I'm sure there were some bruises. And no, I'm not proud of it, but if I had to do it all over again, I absolutely would. Okay, honestly, if I'm gonna be working in an office space, stay out of it. Leave your crap off my desk and don't walk through my area. Like, I bet you it was one of those offices where it's like, oh, the bathroom's right there, but I need to walk around this office space to get to it. So instead, I'm just gonna cut through. The original poster won't mind. And then cut to you literally having to deal with them on a daily basis. Like, that is super frustrating. So good for you for taking up space. Like, honestly, that's sometimes what it takes, and I'm kinda glad you did that. Am I the jerk for telling my roommate that I won't change my habits simply because he's bringing his friends over? Because after he tried to shame me in my own home, I'm honestly kind of wondering if I'm at fault or if this guy's just a massive jerk. Here's what's going on. To start things out, I rent a house with 4 of my buddies from college. We have done this for like 2 years, and it helps that not only are we great friends, but we have a system of deciding house rules. We figure everything out with a majority vote. Whether it's disagreements on cleaning, when to make the quiet hours for the night on weeknights, basically it always comes down to majority rules. It has kept everything flowing smoothly, and so far it's worked really well. Anyways, one of my friends moved out last month to get a place with his girlfriend, and he found a friend of a friend to take over his room. The guy was nice enough, but then he came to us with a declaration. Apparently, he was uncomfortable that we were not always completely dressed in the house. Now, mind you, no one's walking around naked, but some will sometimes not wear a shirt or just be in pajamas or boxers or underwear when lounging around the house. I admittedly am one of the two of us that does it the most, as I usually just lounge around in boxers or other underwear. We all met each other through a sport, so we're comfortable seeing each other like that. Anyways, I guess the new guy was caught off guard because he asked if we could constitute a clothing on rule in the house. Now, as usual, we did a vote and the rest of us thought it was unnecessary, so there was no rule. But I did start wearing clothes more, although there were some times I just didn't bother. You know, like when I woke up, after showering, when I was just coming out of my room for something, etc. And I did that just to be considerate. Well, apparently this was not enough. I noticed that even though we all always gave notice before people came over, he stopped doing so. I found myself a few times just in my underwear when he rolls in with a crew. I got a couple of weird looks, but I just excuse myself and get dressed. I told him once if he gave me a heads up, I would be dressed before they got there, but he just rolled his eyes. One of my other housemates has also run into this issue. Anyways, the other day he came to me and my other housemate and asked if his plans to shame us for never wearing clothing worked out. We looked at him weird and he said that he was purposefully trying to embarrass us by having people see us in our underwear in our own home. We said that we're not embarrassed, I mean we work out for a reason, and we're not going to change his habit. Well, he then stormed off and started smack talking us to the other roommates. So seriously, are we the jerks here? Because at this point I don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, this sounds like one of those roommates where it's like, yeah, this is not working and I think you need to move out. Because holy crap, you guys made a vote. You voted on what you want done in the house, and guess what? Majority rules, and that's just the way it is. So for this guy to be like, oh, I'm just gonna shame you in front of people. I don't care if you're relaxing in the privacy of your own home. I'm gonna make it so you feel embarrassed by doing so. Like, this guy sounds like such a dweeb. I would absolutely kick him out of the house. That's just me though. So no, you're not the jerk. You guys are following your system and it clearly works. And this new guy's trying to mess it up, and that in my opinion is really weird. An entitled jerk on an airplane literally said he was gonna fight me if I don't give up my seat right now, as he was convinced that I was sitting in his seat despite the fact that I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. And trust me, the look on his face when he was proven wrong by the flight attendant is something I will never forget for the rest of my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened back when I was a teenager and was in a lot better shape. I was and still am only 5'5", but I worked out and I practiced martial arts. I was toned but not super buff, and you couldn't really see my muscles with my baggy clothes that I was wearing. I was on an international flight in economy class, while my parents used reward points to go to first class. Now, I didn't care because I would take Dramamine and sleep throughout the flight as much as possible. I put my luggage in the overhead compartment and was sitting in my middle aisle seat, getting as comfortable as I can on a Continental Airlines flight. But then some entitled jerk, like some middle-aged man, walked up and ordered me to move. I was getting slightly groggy from the Dramamine already, and I just stared at him. He then told me that I was in his seat and that I needed to move. But I told him I was in the seat assigned on my ticket and that he must have the wrong seat. He then suddenly started yelling at me, calling me a stupid jerk, and threatened to yank me up by my hair if I didn't move out of the seat. But I told him if he laid a finger on me, I would beat the ever-living crap out of him. He then demanded to see my ticket, but I told him I didn't have to show him anything. Well, a flight attendant heard the raised voices and walked over to see what the problem was. But he was flailing his arms and yelling and saying, "This stupid idiot is in my seat and won't move." The flight attendant then asked to see my ticket, and I ended up showing it to her just to clarify everything, and she said that I was in the correct seat. She then asked to see his ticket, and he showed it to her begrudgingly, insisting that the flight attendant was wrong. She looked at it and told him that his ticket was for the seat behind me. Well, he then turned redder than he already was and looked away. He couldn't even bring himself to make eye contact with me and just mumbled something as he got in the seat behind me. I laughed at him and I went back to the seat to take a nap. Now, lucky for him, I didn't like to recline the seats, so I stayed upright the whole flight. The flight was 11 hours in total, so hopefully it gave him some time to calm down because that was definitely an overreaction. Dude, that is such a weird way of like treating someone who's sitting in a middle seat. Like, dude, what are we doing here? Even if that is your seat, saying you're gonna hurt someone just because they're sitting there is not the answer. Like, dude, what's going on? And plus, it's a middle seat, like I said. Like, that is so dumb. I don't know about you, but I hate the middle seat. I hate sitting there. I'm rubbing up against people that I don't know. I really just feel cramped. And overall, it's a miserable experience. So for this guy to throw a fit over something like that is just comical in my opinion. And if anything, it shows how stupid he really is. Did I overreact in the way that I broke up with my girlfriend? Because right now I'm questioning everything and I don't know if I'm in the wrong. Here's what happened. Okay, so I recently broke up with my girlfriend after about a year together, and now some of my mutual friends are saying I was too harsh, so honestly, I'm questioning myself. Early on in the relationship, I made it clear that I value communication and respecting boundaries. I'm not controlling. I just don't like feeling dismissed or talked over. And you know what? She agreed with me and said that she appreciated that about me. Over time, though, she started doing things that bothered me and would just brush it off when I brought it up. For example, she would cancel plans last minute without explanation. She would make jokes at my expense in front of other people and then go silent for days whenever she was upset instead of talking things through. Every time I tried to address it calmly, she would say I was too sensitive or that I was making a big deal out of nothing. I started feeling like my feelings didn't matter unless they aligned with hers. The breaking point was when she made a pretty personal comment about me during a group hangout that really embarrassed me. I told her privately afterwards that it hurt, and I asked her not to do that again, but she just laughed at me and said, "If you can't handle a joke, that's on you." At that point, I told her I didn't feel respected in the relationship anymore and that I wanted to break up. When I said this, she immediately flipped the script, saying that I was abandoning her, that I never really loved her, and that I was selfish for not trying harder. Ever since the breakup, she's been telling people that I blindsided her and that I left over one joke, even though this was something I brought up multiple times over months. And now I'm getting messages from friends saying that I should have just sucked it up or even given her another chance. So seriously, am I overreacting here for ending the relationship like this? Because at this point, I'm honestly really frustrated. Okay, in my opinion, it does kind of seem like she was just not taking you seriously. From the comments to these weird jokes, like this just all seems like she was trying to make a point of offending you while also being well aware of your boundaries. So in my opinion, there's no good excuse. And by the way, what she was saying is not a joke. She was clearly trying to make a jab at you and make fun of you, all under the guise of it being comedic or something like that. But there was nothing funny about that. She was just being a bully and she knew this would get under your skin. So no, I don't think you're overreacting. I think this was clearly not a good fit for you. And in my opinion, I think you can find someone who's much better about appreciating your feelings and at least attempting to be understanding of how you feel. An entitled coworker training to work at my restaurant tries to throw me under the bus as her trainer for not training her properly on doing her job. But after dealing with her awful attitude, as well as her entitled behavior, I decided that enough was enough, as I went out of my way to expose this lady for the lazy jerk that she truly was. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, I'm a 20-year-old female and I worked at a semi-fine dining steak place as a lead trainer and a server. One of my trainees, let's call her Karen, was 22 years old and had no experience at all. And this is fine, I'm totally down to teach anybody. She was great in the beginning, and she just needed to work on her hospitality. She shadowed me for the first day before she was allowed to give it a go. I have to be tied at the hip with my trainee basically, and Karen absolutely hated this. By the third shift, we were swapping pitching to tables, and I was giving her constructive criticism very softly, since I could tell that she would take it to heart. I had to explain to her that I need to follow her everywhere, maybe except for the bathroom of course, and she told me, "I can do this job. It is not that hard, just leave me alone." And then she bolted away. I found her again and softly explained why I needed to be by her. She then scoffed and ran off to the bathroom. During this time, we do surveys if the customers would like to say their input on the trainees. So I talked to a table that I had, and they said that she was extremely rude to them when I wasn't around, and that half of our stuff came out really late. Now, when I heard this, I apologized, and I told them that I would be taking over their service, and then I just moved on. Once Karen left the bathroom, I spoke to her about what the table said, and she responded by saying, "It is not my fault other servers won't run my food, and it's not my fault that the table didn't know what they wanted." And it's like, are you serious? It's literally in the training to recommend dishes to these people. You were standing around in the kitchen doing nothing when your food was simply waiting to be ran. Not to mention she could have asked for help since I was shadowing her, but she decided just to run off. And this ended up repeating for the rest of the night. At the end of the third shift, I sent her home. I spoke to my boss about my concerns, as I was just about to get a talking to for not being tied to the hip with her. My boss had a moment where he thought to himself, "Oh, that's insane." And we agreed for me to take a different trainee and see if she passes her audit. Well, I heard from my other trainer that she was a nightmare to work with, and she would constantly talk garbage about me behind my back. Now, I wasn't too bothered. It is truly not my problem anymore. That is, until her audit came around. I think she may have forgot that I warned her that I run all the audits with a manager as long as I'm working that shift, and her audit so happened to be on my shift since I worked 5 days a week, and I run them with no bias and only strictly based on points they have to hit that they learned in training. During the audit, she has to treat us like actual customers, and slowly but surely, she crashed and been burned, and I constantly had to dock her points. I spoke with my manager to see if she was worth keeping and explained my experience training her, and all my manager said was absolutely not. So we both spoke with her afterwards and told her that she can try again if she studies, but if she fails again, she can't work here. But once we said that, she proceeds to blame me for not being trained properly, all before I ask my manager to pull up the camera feed. And I also ask if I can pull aside my other trainer to show that what she was saying is not true. Well, all of her accusations basically just got shut down, and it's safe to say that Karen did not end up working there. Semi-fine dining and fine dining is not for everybody. I tried to be gentle in my training, but maybe she's better off at a more casual restaurant. I really tried to prepare her the best that I could, but some people just simply aren't receptive. Yeah, I think you guys dodged a train on this one because it does not sound like this lady would have been very nice to work with. Like if she's being rude to customers at a semi-fine dining restaurant, or even a restaurant that's somewhat upscale, then trust me, this is not someone you want as a coworker. And the fact that she tried to be like, oh, I'm not doing well because it's your fault. Meanwhile, she's not doing her job and she's running off to the bathroom, all because you're trying to train her. Like seriously, this is not that hard. All she had to do was be agreeable, be nice, and literally just do as you're told, and she probably could have passed this with flying colors. Like it's not that hard to just be nice and fake your way through it and get the job, like seriously. So good for you and your manager for putting your foot down and telling her, no, you definitely can't work here. Because based on her attitude alone, that would have been an absolute nightmare to deal with on a daily basis. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my twin brother to stop contacting me after he started only calling me asking for money? Here's what happened. I'm a 34-year-old female, and I have a twin brother, and growing up we were super close. And we both had boys, and we were super excited to raise our boys together. But when he got married, he distanced himself from our side of the family. He got married when he was 21 years old to the mother of his son. And he said he did this because of who I married. Now, I've been with my husband for 13 and a half years, but he has literally never met him, and he would never even take the chance to meet him. Well, my twin brother finally said that it was because of my husband's job of a truck mechanic for semis. To me, it didn't matter what kind of job my husband had. I love my husband, and that's why I married him. So anyways, my twin brother didn't talk to me for about 3 years, so I stopped trying to reach out myself. Well, my husband, about 5 years ago, switched his careers around, and he now makes over $140,000 a year. At first, my husband was making about $90,000 a year, but he's gotten promotions and he's gotten some raises. My twin brother got a divorce 2 years ago, and my dad was just so proud of my husband that my dad was mentioning to my twin brother how well he's doing in his new career. My husband worked his butt off. He decided to go back to school, and that's how he switched careers after graduating. My twin brother started contacting me again, and at first it was just talking about normal things, but then he started asking for money just here and there. However, I would always tell him no because we have kids of our own, and we have our own bills to take care of. About 6 months ago, he was only contacting me about asking for money, especially after he found out my husband got a promotion and a raise. But still, I would always say no. Then I would just stop answering his phone calls altogether because I knew he wanted money. Now, about 2 weeks ago, my twin brother called me again, but this time I decided to answer, and trust me, I know I really shouldn't have. When I picked up the phone, he asked me for $500 because he was getting evicted, but I told him I cannot help him for money and to please stop asking me for money. If you just wanted to call and talk to me, that would have been just fine. Well, my twin brother then started yelling at me. He told me that my husband makes more than enough money to help out my twin brother every once in a while. I told my twin brother absolutely not. We have kids of our own and we have bills of our own that we need to pay, and we have other things that we need to take care of ourselves. He then said that I am obviously not a very good twin sister because I won't help him out. And after he said that, I told him to never contact me again until he would get his crap together and realize that he needed to stop asking for money. After that, he got upset with me and then he hung up the phone. And I have since blocked him on everything, including social media. I don't know if I did the right thing, and this has really hurt me deep down having to do this. My husband said I did the right thing, but he understands how hard it is for me to do that. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you're definitely not the jerk. This guy not only blocks you out of your life because of your husband's job, but then he comes back later and says, oh, your husband's making more money now? Either give me $500 or you're not a good twin sister. Like, that is such an awful thing to do to a sibling. It's not even funny. And the fact that he would really try to guilt trip you of all people after you tried to have some kind of connection with him is just so insane to me. So no, you're definitely not the jerk. You're your twin brother is absolutely out of line, and I definitely think you have it right. If this guy wants to call you, it better be about anything except for money, because that conversation is absolutely off the table. Am I the jerk for not bending over backwards for my parents in order to babysit my 18-year-old sister? Because right now they are very angry with me, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 32-year-old female, and my grandparents and grandmothers are going on a week-long cruise starting at the end of the month. And they haven't mentioned anything about keeping tabs on my younger sister, but tonight, my mom texted me saying, "I really need for you to watch your sister." Well, I told her that I'm going back to work literally at the beginning of next month, and I will be gone from 5:30 in the morning, and I won't be back in town until 5 o'clock p.m. Then I have a boot camp that I'm dedicated to. I told her maybe she can stay with me, so I can see her in the evenings and check in with her during the day. But apparently that just isn't good enough. Maybe I was a bit blunt over text messaging, but I honestly just don't understand what she wants me to do. My sister is 18 years old, by the way, and I physically can't be home until 5 o'clock p.m. My parents called me and I said that she can stay with me so I can see her in the evenings, and she won't have to sleep anywhere alone. But then my mom said, "Oh, so she's just gonna be alone?" And I said, "For most of the day, yes." She then said to me, "Okay, wow." And my dad was in the background yelling at me. Now, I am a people pleaser, and my parents put a lot of their responsibilities on me as a child. They are used to me bending over backwards for them and putting their needs and my sister's needs well before mine. And this is probably the first boundary I've ever set. Anyway, this whole situation pissed me off, and I said, "This is wild, make it make sense to me," which made them even more mad. I then got off the phone and I blocked them for the night, because what I'm not going to do is let them stress me out. I mean, I came a long way with my mental health for this. So am I the jerk for not doing more and snapping at them? Is there something more that I could have done? What should I do? No, you're definitely not the jerk. Like, seriously, do they not realize that you have a job and a life of your own? They not only did not tell you in advance that they wanted you to do this, but they also tried to spring it on you and guilt trip you into what, quitting your job? Do they really expect you to sit at home with your sister and like babysit her? She is 18 years old after all. Like, this is honestly not that big of a deal. She really should be able to take care of herself, and if she can't, then yeah, just go ahead and stay with you for like the duration of their stupid cruise. So for your mom and dad to be like, "I can't believe you're letting her stay by herself all day," like, that is literally just nonsense in my opinion, and that is completely neglectful to your work. So if I was in your shoes, I would have reacted the same way, because what they're asking of you, in my opinion, is completely insane. Today, I quit my job as a server after working in the business for over 30 years, because after dealing with some shady practices from my managers, I decided that enough was enough and that I was not going to be thrown around at their whim. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of backstory, I've been in the service industry for over 30 years, and I really love it. It brings me into close contact with all sorts of people from all walks of life, and that is something that I really value. I generally love people, and I always see the best in them until they show me different. But this story isn't about that. It's about the business side of all of it. Up until today, I worked for a chain pizza restaurant. It is in a college town and should be fairly busy all the time, but it isn't. The only reason I could find for this was that the pizzas are stupidly expensive. We're talking $30 for one pizza, and a lot of the servers I worked with just didn't care. During my day shift of serving, if I didn't get cut for lack of business, I would take home maybe $40. For the night shift on the weekend, with about 6 servers on, I would maybe make $100, and that's a big maybe. My living expenses are exorbitant, and money's not really an issue anyway, so the low pay was acceptable. While I was working hard, it was only a few hours a day, and it gave me plenty of time to pursue my real passion and what I went to school for, which was music. Recently, the company I worked for switched to a different payment system, which means that all my tips were collected and then sent to me via direct deposit the next day. Now, at first I was a bit bummed out because I like having instant cash every single day, and in the right establishment, that has been very lucrative for me. I also understood why the company was doing it. Keeping a large sum of money on hand to pay out credit card tips can be rough, and perhaps even dangerous for the business if it's robbed or something else. They officially rolled it out on Monday, so on Monday, I turned in all of my monies from my day shift and my night shift, and on Tuesday morning, they direct deposited $87 into my account. And I think to myself, okay, cool. Now I don't have to go to the bank all the time to deposit my cash. Except there was one problem. That was more money than they should have paid me out. When I asked what was going on with that, none of the store managers could explain to me why, or even how it all had gone wrong. My general manager informed me that while the company was probably going to ask for that money back, he knew that it was their mistake, and they wouldn't make me or the other 2 servers pay that money back. Well, on Wednesday, I walked into work and I was told immediately that I had to pay back over $50 because they had messed up and paid me too much. And you know what? I just let out a laugh. I responded by saying, well, that's not what the general manager told me yesterday. So no, I don't think I will. Then my direct deposit for Tuesday's tips hit my bank. And guess what? I was short. And the money that they claimed was supposed to be my tip out and my actual net tip out were not what my checkout said it was supposed to be from the day before. And again, none of the managers could explain to me why. And I couldn't get corporate to give any answers either. Now, it was only 2 cents, so I wasn't really terribly concerned about any of that. But what did bother me is that the number they had for tips received didn't match the number for my checkout of the shift. It was off by a lot. When I showed this to my general manager, he said to me that's quite concerning, but that just didn't go any further. So after getting the runaround, I quit. Because you know what? Screw that. The old system worked fine. I was never shorted or paid more than what I should have been paid. And then they switched, and instead of making sure there wouldn't be any issues before rolling it out, they just rolled it out anyways. Currently, there are 37 servers across 3 states having issues. And as far as I know, I'm the first one to quit. But I know for certain that the store I worked at is losing more servers. And I'm fairly certain that many more will follow suit. So let this be a lesson to you. It's your money that you worked very hard for. Do not let the company that you work for try to mess with it. And if they do and can't give you reasons as to why, you need to find another place to work. Because this is shady business, and you do not need that in your life. Wow, the original poster has it 100% correct. These people were messing with this person's money, and they were literally giving them the runaround instead of giving them a solid answer as to why the money was wrong. Like, that literally is insane in my opinion, and there's no good excuse for that not being correct. Like, that's one of those things that needs to be right pretty much every time. Otherwise, the system, in my opinion, just falls apart. So good for you for standing your ground and saying, you know what, I don't need this. Because these people sound incredibly shady, and you definitely do not need that in your life. My entitled coworker intentionally spreads lies to everybody around the office, all because she was caught playing a mobile game on her phone. Here's what happened. Okay, I have a very annoying colleague who we will call Melanie for the sake of the story. And trust me when I say this, me as well as the rest of the office can share 1,000 stories about her behavior. She was playing a mobile game with the sound on, and one other girl who we will call Valerie told her to put it on silent. Well, the first thing she did was scold Valerie for the times that she spoke to someone and Melanie got disturbed. Valerie then spoke to one of our other colleagues in her mother tongue. Now, they don't really do this when they are in a group, but when they are discussing something amongst each other, they prefer to use their native language. Well, this bothers Melanie too much because she comes to the office only to eavesdrop on everybody else, not to mention the fact that she severely is lagging behind in all of her work. Well, the next thing she does was tell everyone in the department, you know, whoever is patient enough to listen to her, that Valerie has a problem with Melanie's message notifications, completely skipping out the part where she was playing a game on her phone. Then she caught me while I was having some tea. Surprisingly, or not really, she catches me on very specific days when she has something that she needs to tell me. This hasn't happened in a while, and I had a lot of work that day, so my guard was lower. Melanie then told me that Valerie was saying that I exposed myself too much in the office and that my attire was inappropriate. Then she said that everyone in the department agrees. Now, most of the time, I ignore whatever comes out of Melanie's mouth, but due to too much stress, I immediately reported Valerie to my boss. For the record, I work at a university and mostly just wear crop tops and jeans or sometimes a sundress, which is very common in our department. The only difference is that I'm slightly curvy and I have a full head of frizzy curly hair, but no one in the department has ever made a comment, including my female boss. The boss was super supportive and told me that she'll take action against Valerie, but also suggested that I speak to her first. Now, I was not looking forward to that because Valerie is very much a junior to me and has always kept her distance. And you know what? I actually believe what Melanie said, even though I knew that Melanie must have twisted something. I definitely believe that Valerie must have made at least a small comment about my attire. So I didn't say anything and I went home for an extended weekend. And when I came back, my head was clear and I used the time that I had in my hands. Well, I finally called Valerie near my desk in full view of Melanie. And that's when Valerie told me that she asked Melanie to turn her phone on silent, and since then she's been on a hate mission against her, spreading all kinds of lies about her. And once Valerie said that, we both watched as Melanie practically ran out of the office, not even stopping to put on her bag properly. I then updated my boss, and I heard from my colleagues that Melanie came to the office super early the next morning, all in some kind of desperate effort to do damage control with my boss. Wow, Melanie sounds like an awful coworker. She is quite literally spreading lies around the office, all because somebody caught her playing a game on her phone. Like seriously, seriously, is it that big of a deal where you have to ruin relationships in the office because of your stupidity? I'm honestly blown away that she even still has a job, because in my opinion, that is something that is completely unforgivable, and hopefully in the future you don't have to deal with her ever again. Am I the jerk for telling my cousin to stop holding a grudge at me over something that I did when I was 7 years old? Because right now the way she's acting is completely unreasonable, and at this point I don't know what to do. I'm a 17-year-old female, and I have a 30-year-old cousin who we will call Amanda, who's always been seen as the black sheep of our family. She's neurodivergent and has more of an alternative style. Think bright hair, tattoos, and some piercings. We were never close because of the age gap, but our families wanted to be close-knit. When my cousin turned 20 years old, her family decided to visit us and celebrate her birthday together. Well, here's the problem. I was 7 years old at the time, and I threw a temper tantrum. I wanted to go to a different restaurant than the one my cousin had picked out, and I made such a fuss that everyone ended up staying home. Later, when they got cake for my cousin, I insisted on blowing out the candles myself, and my parents let me do it because they didn't want to deal with another meltdown, and told my cousin that she was too old to be making a fuss over her birthday anyways. Honestly, I don't remember much from that day, but apparently it really hurt my cousin. She wasn't even allowed to celebrate with her friends like she wanted to because she had to come on that family trip. Fast forward to now, and I'm applying to colleges, specifically in the state where my cousin lives. Over the years, I've come to realize just how toxic some of our family dynamics are, and I reached out to my cousin to apologize for what happened when I was a kid. I told her that I understand now, and I asked if she could help me navigate things as I apply to schools in the area. Well, my cousin pretty much brushed me off and told me that she's still upset about what happened on her 20th birthday. I tried to explain that I was just a kid at the time and that I'm sorry, but she's holding on to a grudge like it happened yesterday. I told her she needs to let it go, but she seems really stuck on it. My parents think that she's being unreasonable, but I'm starting to wonder if I'm being insensitive to her feelings. So I really need to know, am I the jerk for telling my cousin to stop holding onto a grudge over something that I did when I was 7 years old? What should I do? No, you're definitely not the jerk. You're on the cusp of being an adult, and the fact that she wants to hold this against you, in my opinion, is insane. Because I don't know about you, but the way someone acts when they're 7 years old is not the same thing as when they're 17. Like, the original poster is quite literally a different person. So for your cousin to be like, no, I'm still bitter about my 20th birthday, like, that is really weird to me, and if anything, she should really direct that anger at the rest of her family and not at the child who was having a bad time. Because the way she's acting, in my opinion, is completely ridiculous. An entitled old jerk tries to get me fired from my job after he stalks me around my job and takes pictures of me using my phone while on the job. And despite the fact that this was a work phone that I was using on the job, this guy still was very convinced that I was goofing off and not doing what I needed to do. And I'm honestly still blown away by this guy's creepy behavior. Here's what happened. So for about a year now, I've worked at a storage facility. It's all outdoor floor level, and it's a huge place with over 1,500 units. And yes, we have to use a golf cart just to get around. The tiny office out front has one corded phone. And since before I started here, they have had an office iPhone that we can forward calls to from the office phone, so we can be anywhere on the property and take calls. The first thing they trained us on is don't leave the office without it. They also don't care at all if we have personal phones on and if we're using them. It can get really slow, so playing games and watching videos is perfectly okay. As long as we aren't doing it when people are in the office needing assistance, they really just don't care. So this older guy comes in and he asks me if I'm new. We have a short chat and he pays his bill a year in advance, so he hasn't really met me yet. So he pays, says he'll be in his unit all day arranging and pulling stuff, and honestly, that's no problem. But it's also important to remember that today there was a big issue getting worked on. 4 units we have cleared out due to water damage need to be photographed and inspected, and the manager is doing manager stuff with insurance, and the handyman is there to fix them. I just got the units moved out into another spot, so today I'm driving around to the old units and sending my manager the photos for insurance. And I go ahead and I forward the calls. I use the iPhone to take photos so that they are on the work cloud account and so she can access them immediately. At the first unit, I call her on my personal cell phone to make sure the photos are good and see if she needs anything else, and to see if she's happy with any of the things that she's looking through. Once I was done, I hang up and I turn around to walk back to the golf cart, and this old man is literally standing directly behind me with this weird smile on his face as if he caught me doing something I shouldn't. He even had his arms folded like I did something wrong. Now this really scares me suddenly because I had no idea he was even around me at that moment, and I say to him, "Can I help you?" He then lets out a snide remark and says, "No, I don't think so," and then walks away. It was honestly so weird and very creepy. So I just went about with the rest of the units as necessary. I sit in the cart for about a minute until she's able to look through the photos and verify that I don't need to send anything else. I mean, I really didn't want to go back out and have to come back again if something was missing. She then calls and tells me everything looks great and that I can change the status of the units to unavailable in our system and just get back to my usual job. I then decide to tell her what happened too and that the guy was really weird about it, and she was like, oh yeah, he's hardly ever here and you won't need to deal with him much longer, but if you feel like he's off, you can just lock the door and put a sign up to call and just not interact with him. So you know what? That's exactly what I did. And thankfully, I didn't have to deal with him at all, but the very next day, things kind of go south. Now, we have one general inbox and everything goes there. We use our own personal signatures as we reply, but right then, I see an email from that guy. He literally sent an email directed to the inbox with photos and videos following me around the property, saying that he caught me sitting around and chatting using my cell phone, saying that I was taking photos of units with a cell phone on company time, and then further lies and says that when I got caught, I panicked and tried to tell him that I didn't have a cell phone on me. He made up this whole story like I was a school child caught with a forbidden phone in class. Like, why would I even do that in reality when it's the company phone I'm required to keep on me? Like, it was just so creepy. Even better though, I have my boss read it, and since I already spoke with her about the situation from his visit, she had to call him and explain it to him. And it was such a weird thing. Like, why didn't he bother asking about it instead of being like, oh, an employee on a cell phone? That's bad, let's tell on him. Like, I get there's probably some kind of generational difference here, and they just aren't used to cell phones being a necessity at the workplace, but the way he acted so snide, like he caught me being bad and just couldn't wait to tattle, was such a weird thing. And to top it all off, there's a lot of older people renting units. I've had them bring up the cell phone thing maybe once or twice, and even a few of them get upset because they're like, oh, you're just so dependent on them. But past all that, I've never seen anyone excited for the opportunity to use it for evil like this. And I honestly hope I never deal with this guy ever again. Yeah, that guy sounds super obnoxious. Like, seriously, why would you be excited to try and get somebody in trouble? Like, that sounds so obnoxious and just so annoying. Is his life seriously that boring that he has to follow somebody around to try and get him in trouble? Like, doesn't he have a unit that he's trying to like work out or something like that? Like, why would he be there? That is so creepy. And for me, the worst part about it is the fact that he was following you around without your knowledge. Like, I don't care who you are, if someone's secretly following me around and like tracking my every move like that, especially in my place of like employment, like that is just crazy to me, and there's no good excuse for that. Like, just mind your own business and live your life, dude. You don't have to follow this person around. It's also ironic to me that anyone would be like, oh, you're just so dependent on those cell phones. And it's like, yeah, I need to do my job on the fly. If I don't have this phone with me, then I can't do exactly what I need to do. Like, how is that hard for anybody to understand? Like, I just don't get it. But I think the original poster did it right by telling their manager the day before, because this guy was clearly trying to get you in trouble. And that, in my opinion, is completely unfair. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My disabled mom is constantly insulting me while also expecting me to help her all the time. And after dealing with her attitude for most of my life, I find myself at a crossroads because I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I was hoping for some advice on what's going on in my life. I'm a 21-year-old college student and I'm living at home and I'm not currently paying rent. I do not have a job, and my mom in her 50s, first and foremost, is disabled. She is heavily obese and has a lot of health problems and physical pain that causes movement for her on most days to be really hard, and some days are worse than others. Now, the point of making this post is that as I grew up, my mom often insulted me. When she has gotten mad, she has called me many names and many curse words, and this has happened at least since I was 10 years old. I remember 2 big fights in the past 3 years, where in the first one, she felt like I didn't help her out enough with her disability, and she called me worthless, said that I was ungrateful, and threw things at my closed bedroom door from the adjacent room. The next fight was much more recent, only being this last year, and this all stems when I didn't take her advice of taking a fanny pack on a plane that I was going on. She called me a stupid idiot and a know-it-all, and many other names. She also physically blocked my way out of the room when I tried to leave, and slammed my door multiple times when I eventually made it back to my room. It eventually escalated to my dad defending me, and they argued with each other. That led to my mom telling me that the both of them would be getting a divorce because of me, and that this would make me happy, wouldn't it? However, despite all of this, she had gotten better over the last year. She hadn't insulted me at all, and hadn't gotten mad at me to that degree anymore. Our relationship improved, and I even sought her out for comfort when I was having a depressive episode episode the other week. But as I previously mentioned, I don't have a job as I'm struggling to find one. I've been actively applying for months, and the farthest I've gotten were some interviews, but I haven't been successful at all. It's been really demoralizing. So a couple of weeks ago, I overheard her telling her friend that I was not trying hard enough to get a job, and that if I wanted to be treated like an adult, I should get a job like a normal adult. And her saying that just brought everything back. So I've been avoiding her as much as I can while living in the same house, as I try to deal with the feelings it gave me. But the problem is that she's noticed, as she often comes to me for help with chores and household stuff, like making dinner or even cleaning up. She's getting more mad at me because of me avoiding her, and my dad this time agrees with her that I should be helping her more on account of her disability, stating that she loves me, and just because I'm pissed off doesn't mean that I shouldn't help her out. But I don't understand why I should help her when she says these things about me. Then also, I don't know what to do, as I can't just move out on the spot. I don't have a job, and I've had a lot of trouble finding one. The only good thing is that my dad refuses to make me pay rent, while my mom wants me to do that. I don't know what to do, and I don't know why I should help her, and I just don't know how much I can take living with her if she starts insulting me all over again. I'm honestly scared of this situation because I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, for starters, I think you really do need to get a job, but not for the reasons you might be thinking. You don't need a job to make your mom happy. You need a job so you can save up and move out of that house. If I was in your shoes, that would be the only thought in my head. Save up my money in my bank account, develop a game plan for what I'm gonna do when I move out, and then find a place and get out of there. Like, what you're describing sounds awful. Your mom is guilt-tripping you into helping her with all this stuff, and yes, she does have a disability, but last I checked, you are not her caretaker. Like, that is ridiculous. And in my opinion, you should not be obligated to help her out in that kind of way constantly. Sure, you can do your chores and help out around the house, but from the sounds of it, it seems like this is going to be a much more involved role in your life. So in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would be making a plan to get out of there, because I can guarantee you if you don't get a job and find some kind of money in your bank account, you're gonna look up one day and it's gonna be 5 years later and you're still gonna be dealing with this woman. And in my opinion, I think it's better to get things going now instead of waiting around until it's way too late. My coworker got mad at me when I caught him stealing my tips, and even went as far as cussing me out when we were clocking out that day. And now, after telling my managers everything, I have my fingers crossed that this guy won't have a job anytime soon, because working with him quite literally is an absolute nightmare. Here's what happened. So for a bit of context, I work at a small town pizza place, and each final bill is usually somewhere between $20 to $40, so the tips aren't always amazing, but they are still something, so we'll take it. Overall, I like my job and the people I work with. That is, with the exception of this one guy who we will call Caleb. On his very first day a few weeks ago, Caleb came in high out of his mind and ended up getting sent home. And you know what? Everyone has some bad days, so whatever, but the least he can do is come in able to work on his first day. He's training to serve, and I was working with him and the trainer this past Monday. I had a table of a few of my regulars who always leave me a $5 bill. I said my usual have a good night and all that, and I watched them put in the little bill sleeve and walked off to attend another table. Well, I come back and I start bussing after they leave, and the tip is gone. I immediately tell the manager that someone took my tip, and he goes to ask Caleb if he saw anything. Well, Caleb, without saying a word, pulls the $5 bill from his apron and hands it to the manager with a scowl. I mean, the audacity itself was one thing, but I was just glad to have the money back, so I ignored it, and I was then just more diligent about watching my tables for the rest of the night. Later on, right before I clocked out, Caleb comes up to me, and while walking past me, he says to me, "You know, you didn't have to say anything, you jerk." Only trust me, he didn't say jerk. And I thought to myself, you have got to be kidding me. I then told the manager again, because I am not one to deal with that at all. Anyways, he called out 2 days ago to say that his phone was broken so he couldn't come to work. And then he called out today saying that he forgot and had plans. And honestly, I hope my managers do something about this, because working with this guy is an absolute nightmare. Wow, I can't believe this guy still has a job after stealing your tips. Never mind the fact that he called you a horrible curse word when you called him out for it, or the fact that he's coming to work high. Like, all of that is kind of secondary in my opinion, because this guy straight up stole from you. He stole your money and tried to take it without you knowing about it. And that, in my opinion, is completely inappropriate. Like, that is not okay. You can't do that to somebody. Like, why on earth would the manager be like, "Oh, you stole some money? Okay, it's time for you to go." So truly, I hope for your sake you don't have to deal with Caleb anytime soon either, because what you described sounds incredibly annoying. Am I the jerk for donating my son's entire toy collection to charity after he refused to clean his room? Here's what happened. I'm a 38-year-old male, and I have a 10-year-old son who has been struggling with keeping his room clean. I've asked him repeatedly to tidy up, and every time I end up doing it myself or giving him a reminder. Well, last week, after another round of nagging and zero results, I decided to take a more drastic approach. I told my son that if he didn't clean his room by the end of the week, I would donate his toys to charity. And of course, he didn't take me seriously and continued to leave his room in a mess. Well, when the deadline passed, I followed through and donated his entire toy collection to a local children's charity. My son was absolutely devastated when he found out. He cried and begged me to get the toys back, but I explained that the toys were already gone and that he should learn a lesson about responsibility. My wife is furious with me and says I was too harsh. She argues that it was unnecessary to donate all of his toys and that he should have been given another chance. I understand my wife's point, but I also think that Jamie needed a wake-up call. He's been getting away with ignoring chores for too long, and I wanted to show him that there are real consequences for his actions. Plus, the charity will benefit from the toys, and other kids will get joy from them. But now, my wife is considering talking to a family therapist about this, and my son is obviously upset, and I'm beginning to wonder if I was too extreme. So am I the jerk for donating my son's toys? What should I do? Yes, 100%, you are absolutely the jerk. Instead of taking his toys away and keeping them so that he has to earn them back or something like that, you decided to take this to the extreme and be like, okay, I'm donating it to charity. You do know your son is 10 years old, right? Seriously, this is a 10-year-old we're talking about. This is a literal child. And instead of trying to teach him a lesson in a reasonable way, you went the completely irrational route and probably scarred this kid for life. Seriously, what is wrong with you? That is such a weird way to try and teach someone a lesson. And your justification for it is just insane in my opinion. You're trying to be like, oh, well, he needs to learn from his consequences. Plus the charity's gonna benefit from the toys. Do you just hate your son or something like that? Are you kidding me right now? I can understand him not doing his chores or not tidying up when he's supposed to, but doing something like this is so extreme it's not even funny. You got rid of something that meant a lot to him just to try and prove some weird point that you wanted to make. Your wife is absolutely right in thinking, okay, we need a therapist for our kid because he is destroyed right now. Also, fun fact, what you did is completely irreversible. He will never get those toys back ever, and I guarantee you he will remember this for the rest of his life. So yes, you are absolutely the jerk, and the way that you escalated to such a dramatic degree, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. I bought a PC that my awful professor owned that had files on it that he demanded I delete. So I maliciously complied by deleting the files immediately, only to then find out that he desperately needed them, as that was the only copy he ever made. Here's what happened. While I was studying at university, I crossed paths with a hostile professor, who we will call Professor Nasty, who absolutely did not want to be questioned about anything during class. He would say, oh, you're being disruptive. I'm a researcher with a PhD. You're wasting my time. Just study harder. And there were more, but honestly, these were the highlights. Well, one day I missed a lecture, so just before the class started, I asked him if I might have a copy of his lecture notes from the class that I had missed. Well, when I said that, he blew up at me. He slammed his papers down and started ripping me a new one, saying that if I was not serious about his class, then I shouldn't be in it and that I should just drop it. This went on for about 5 minutes into the class, and nobody else said a word, and the class just continued. Now, fast forward, and for reference, the university had a surplus barn where unneeded equipment was sold at bulk rates. I got there first thing in the morning, and I spotted a pallet with a bunch of computer junk on it. For about $50, I ended up with a dot matrix printer, a few modems, and an extended technology PC, as well as a monitor and a keyboard setup. And of course, I also got a receipt. Now, my place wasn't far, so I borrowed a wheelbarrow, and I brought it all home in 2 trips. The printer was beyond repair. Only 2 of the modems still worked, but the PC system booted up on the first try. I looked through the directory, and I saw what looked like drafts of research paper and a whole lot of data files as well. And wouldn't you guess it, the hard drive's volume name was the same as Professor Nasty. So I rang up his office. His secretary, who was a sweet grandmotherly type of woman, answered the phone, and I explained what I had found. She asked me to hold, and a minute or two later, Professor Nasty himself was on the line, telling me to get those files off the computer right now. So I decided to maliciously comply. I did this right away, and I deleted all the data and the document files. Then I overwrote the empty drive space with a huge file full of random bytes of data. Then I deleted that file, and I repeated the process 6 more times. Then I reformatted the drive with a new operating system. The PC booted up right away to the DOS prompt, and I was happy with my new PC. Well, this is when some fallout really started to take place. At the next class session, Professor Nasty greeted me by my name and politely asked if I removed the files from my computer yet. I looked at him and I said, "Oh, of course, sir. I removed those files from my computer just like you told me to." Why? Were they important? Well, apparently they were. He told me how important the files were and that they had something to do with 2 to 3 years of research data for a corporate-backed project. But I said to him, "I'm sorry, sir, but you told me to get rid of those files off of my computer, so that's what I did. And your secretary and anyone else listening in will verify that. Those files are gone, and there's nothing anyone could do about it." Well, Professor Nasty had to default on his project, which looked really bad for his department and the university as well. Now, the rumor suggested that he had made no backups because he feared plagiarism. And I also had a few discussions with the dean and some others about all of this, but it all came back to Professor Nasty's own carelessness. I finished the class and I got a decent grade, and thankfully, I never saw him ever again. Yeah, that professor's not only really stupid, but he also absolutely had that coming. Like seriously, all he has to do is be a decent person and all of this could have been avoided. Or if he was better at his job, he could have made a backup plan and had some kind of backup file he could go to. Why on earth would you not secure those files before you give up your PC? So yeah, this guy is a complete moron, and based on his attitude, he absolutely deserved the backlash that I'm sure he received. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my sister-in-law babysit my baby after she's made some sketchy remarks in the past about childcare? Here's what happened. Okay, so my husband and I had to be somewhere for our older child, so we asked my mother-in-law if she could watch our 3-month-old son for a few hours. She said of course, but unfortunately when we went to drop him off, she wasn't home, and one of my husband's sisters, who we will call Jane, was there instead. For reference, Jane is 21 years old. Apparently my mother-in-law wasn't going to be home for a bit, so Jane agreed to watch our son for some time. Well, I immediately said no, because Jane believes that babies don't feel anything. She thinks that they cry for no reason, and we shouldn't respond to their cries ever for whatever reason, and that not responding won't have any effect on them. She thinks that anything we do to babies during this period of their lives will have absolutely zero effect on them in the future, and she often calls them mindless as well. My husband called his mom and we politely explained our concerns, and then hung up because we were extremely busy already. Now, I figured that was it until Jane came over extremely upset and in tears, insisting that she's not a bad person and that she would never do anything to hurt any kid. She then accused me of discriminating against her because she doesn't want or even have kids like everyone else in the family, but I told her straight up that I don't care if she wants kids of her own, and I said that I don't like her thoughts on how to care for babies specifically. And instead of trying to understand me, she doubled down and said that her way of dealing with babies makes sense and that I'm wrong and I'm just extremely sensitive in nature, so of course I don't get it. She then kept arguing with me about how to take care of my baby, so I just asked her to leave and she blew up on me. My husband even told her to calm down and that it's not like we're preventing her from seeing our kids all together, but she just said, "Okay, screw you and your stupid kids," and then she left in a rage. But despite all that's happened, my mother-in-law is really annoyed with me because apparently Jane is still very upset, and I'm just wondering if I'm the jerk here. Like, I don't think I am, especially since no one lets her babysit for the same reasons, but I'm just the first person to actually say no to her face, as well as tell her why instead of making up an excuse. Was I being too harsh? What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all because that is some very concerning behavior. That is an immediate red flag, and it's proof to me why no one else would want her to babysit any kid. If she really would never hurt a kid for any reason, then why does she advertise herself as someone who could let that happen? Like, she very clearly just doesn't care, and if anything, she would be very apathetic if something went down. So no, I don't blame you in the slightest for saying no, you're not watching my baby, because Jane's behavior, in my opinion, is incredibly concerning. An entitled group of people dine and dash at a restaurant, leaving a pregnant woman with a bill of over $1,000 in steaks, desserts, and drinks. Things got so bad that this pregnant woman actually had to have an ambulance called for her as she was having a literal meltdown. Here's what happened. Okay, so we were having dinner last Sunday night for my niece's birthday at a very nice steakhouse, and the table next to us was having a huge party. I mean, I counted at least 36 people sat around a whole stack of tables all pushed together. Now, the night went on and we had a lovely dinner, and noticed that the people at the big table were drifting off in small groups, which is honestly nothing unusual. Well, as we were finishing up, there was a lady screaming and crying at the register at the front. She was a heavily pregnant woman, and she was having an absolute meltdown. Now, we got the conversation from a waiter a little bit later, and it turns out that everyone who left prior to her had told her that they would pay for their meals and drinks separately on the way out. And as I'm from Australia, this is very common to split the bill like that. Well, they then apparently told the cashier that they'd given their portion of the bill to a friend who would pay at the end of the night. night. And this was supposed to all be good, except they did neither of those things. The pregnant woman got to the cashier at the end of the night and was then presented with a bill for several thousands of dollars for steaks, desserts, and drinks. And it was right at this moment that she had a meltdown. This lady was in such a state that the manager called an ambulance for her. When we left, her partner was screaming down the phone at someone to get their stupid butts back to the restaurant and pay for their bill, or they would never see him or their baby ever again. And honestly, I was so sad for them. It looked like a bunch of close friends and family having a celebration night out. I mean, who would do something like that to someone they care about? Seriously, what did they think was going to happen? Did they really think the couple would just suck it up and pay for it? I'm honestly still in shock that these people did this, and I really hope that all of this got worked out in some kind of way. Wow, talk about having awful friends and family. Seriously, they left a pregnant woman to pay for all this stuff and just all slowly trickled out of the restaurant in some kind of hopes of, like, I don't know, dining and dashing. Like, that is seriously messed up. That is so crazy to me. You would think that people would have some kind of backbone and actually pay for their meal, but instead they pull a fast one on this poor lady and her husband and basically try to say, oh yeah, she's gonna take care of it. That is crazy to me, and I've never heard of anything like that happening before, especially not a giant group like this. Like, in some kind of twisted universe, I can imagine some of them doing that, but not all of them. Seriously, what, 34 people decided, oh yeah, we're gonna get out of here and leave them with the bill. Like, that's crazy to me. There is no excuse for that, because this pregnant woman and her husband did not deserve this. And I don't know about you, but if that was me, I would not have thousands of dollars at the ready to pay for all this stuff. So hopefully there is some kind of good ending to this, because what happened to this lady is absolutely atrocious. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my dad that he made his own mess and that I am not going to help him with it? Because right now the whole family is falling apart and it is quite literally his fault. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, my dad is a complete mess up. He and my mom were together for 7 years and they were high school sweethearts and everything, and my mom eventually found out that she was pregnant with me. He says he freaked out and cheated on her because he was scared of being a father, but he regretted it after the 3rd time of sleeping with this other woman and thought that he could leave it behind. He then proposed to my mom and she accepted. Then when my mom was 7 months pregnant with me, the other woman showed up and said dad got her pregnant. And it was then that my mom called off the engagement. And from that mess, my dad has me, an 18-year-old male, and my 17-year-old sister, who we will call Stacy. Stacy is not her real name. The other woman wanted a relationship with dad, but he said he only ever loved and wanted my mom. She was a mistake and the baby was a mistake. Mom didn't want him back, and dad ended up getting 50-50 custody of me and Stacy. Her mom tried for maybe 2 years, and it sounds like to get back with dad, and even told my mom she was selfish for keeping dad from her. But then she gave up. Dad pined for mom for years and tried to win her back, and it really pissed Stacy off because her mom was basically saying that her dad chose mom and me over them. So she basically had a chip on her shoulder with me and my mom. Now, when she was way too young to be saying stuff like this, she started calling me and my mom degrading insults. And my dad would get so mad when Stacy talked to mom that way, and dad would just tell mom that he was sorry and that he'd make it work, while also desperately proclaiming his love for her. And this was all going on when I was old enough to remember witnessing this pathetic mess. I was 11 years old when dad moved on and finally let mom go. He met a woman and got married to her, which then brought about my 6-year-old sister, who we will call Georgie. Well, Stacy was furious that dad fell in love with someone else other than her mom, that instead of falling in love with her mom again, he found someone else after letting go of mom after 11 years. So Stacy hates Georgie and she treats her like garbage. My dad's wife passed away when Georgie was only 3, and Stacy has said some pretty twisted stuff about her to Georgie. And she's also said it to me because I got along with my dad's late wife. Now, I have mostly stayed out of all of this all the way until now, but I answer occasional calls from my dad. He said he wanted to get the family together when we talked yesterday, and that he wants us to be close again, that he needs my help to do it, and that he can't continue with this toxic mess. Well, I told him he made his own mess and I'm not helping him with it, that he needs to take accountability and stop making it worse. My dad then told me that I should care about my sisters and how we'll never be close if this continues, but I told him that it was not my fault. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation for trying to stay out of it? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk, but your dad absolutely is. This guy has children from like 3 different moms. He has literally never been consistent with anybody, and he just constantly keeps messing up and is now trying to get you to help him fix it. And I personally think under any other circumstance, this might be something you're willing to like entertain in the slightest. honest. But the fact that he's basically trying to guilt trip you into taking care of it by saying, oh, you should be sisters, we'll never be close if you don't fix it. It's like, wait a second, I'm not the reason this all went down like this. This quite literally stems back to him cheating on your mom. Like, this is literally not your problem, and the fact that you're 18, in my opinion, is like the best thing about this, because you can absolutely choose where you want to live. And if you're able to, you can move out and move on with your life. Because in my opinion, I really do think your dad failed in many ways, and that failure is something that he needs to address and not you. I feel that my girlfriend is taking advantage of me financially, as she is constantly and consistently making me pay for everything around the house, simply because I make more money than her. And now, as a result, I'm rethinking my entire relationship, because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old male, and I'm in my first year of being a corporate lawyer in New York City, where I make about $250,000 per year, and I work from 60 to 70 hours per week. I'm a first-generation Taiwanese American, and my parents are engineers, and with their help, I am currently debt-free. I live with my 24-year-old girlfriend, who I met about 2 years ago when I was in law school, and who currently works at a nonprofit near me, where she has an entry-level job making about $60,000 a year. Anyways, she has been living with me for about a year now, and while initially it went well, I'm now having some issues. I pay the entire $5,100 rent and utilities for our very small one-bedroom apartment, and she insists that I pay for virtually everything else as well because she makes less. And she also pays for some things for herself, but it's stuff like groceries or her going out with her friends. We had conversations about money early on, and I agreed that I would pay for rent and utilities and for our dates, essentially because for starters, I like doing it. Also, I make more money, and she agreed that she would spend more quality time with me whenever I want, if you know what I mean. So while it was going great for like 8 months, the situation has been getting out of hand recently. She basically insists that I take her out for expensive dinners to trendy places that she finds on TikTok at least twice a week. She asks for makeup and clothing and kitchen and home things, and while I suppose I can't afford it, I'm not saving or investing as much as I want. When I try to confront her, she just argues very passionately, saying that we have an arrangement and that she doesn't want to be with a cheap guy and just sort of exhaust my energy. Beyond that, I'm conflicted. I really like this girl, and she seems very serious about this relationship. She's very family-oriented, her degree is in adolescent psychology, she wants to teach and have kids and all this other good stuff, but I feel like she's only with me because I have a well-paying job, and she has this idea of getting married to a rich guy. I know a lot of senior male firm partners and finance guys in New York City who have stay-at-home wives, and it does work for them, and I honestly like this scenario. But the reality is that I can't afford to do it now. I need to save up for a nest egg for a few years and live frugally in case my career doesn't go where I want it to. How do I deal with this situation? Should I stay with her, or is this kind of a lost cause? What should I do? Okay, for starters, this does not sound like one of those situations where the wife is a stay-at-home mom and she like takes care of the house. If anything, it seems like you've set up a very sketchy deal between the two of you, and now you're realizing this is not working out in your favor. Especially that third point you made, which I'm not going to elaborate on, but it definitely sounds super sketchy. So in my opinion, yes, I do think she's taking advantage of you financially, but also you're definitely at fault for basically handing it to her. And I have to disagree with you on some of your points, because you're saying, oh yeah, she's family oriented and she's a good girlfriend and she wants to have kids. But if you really think this is gonna get better all of a sudden just because you have a family and make things official, then in my opinion, I think you're out of your mind delusional. Because then everything you're talking about is going to be permanent. She will absolutely stick around, and then there's nothing you can do about it. This might just be the tip of the iceberg because you are spending a lot of money already. So yes, your girlfriend is absolutely taking advantage of you and all of your money, but also you are doing nothing to fix your situation. And in my opinion, nothing's gonna get any better unless some kind of change happens. Am I the jerk for telling my sister that her new boyfriend can't bring his child to my wedding, as I made it very clear 2 years ago that my wedding was going to be child-free? Because right now she is calling me a massive jerk, and she is very angry that I've refused to give in to her demands. Here's what happened. I'm a 33-year-old female, and I'm getting married in November of 2024, which has been planned for the last 2 years. My sister, who's 36 years old, has just split up with her husband and has started a new relationship with one of her colleagues. For the sake of the story, we'll call him Brandon. And this is someone who I've briefly met a couple of times before, but I don't know them very well. He's nice enough, but my future husband has never met him, and like I say, I don't really know him myself. My sister mentioned to Brandon that she is my maid of honor and that I will be getting married in November within the first week of their new relationship. Before my sister and her husband split up, and for the sake of the story, we'll call him Ryan, that's not his real name, they were both invited to to the wedding, and they'd been married for 15 years, so Ryan was a big part of the family. Well, Brandon automatically assumed he was invited to the wedding in Ryan's place, which I did not like, but sort of accepted that she'd won a +1, and Ryan would not want to come now anyways given the situation, so I just let it go. Well, she then informs me that Brandon told his daughter, who we will call Kelly, who he co-parents with his ex, that they're both coming to my wedding, so Kelly is really excited. Now, for reference, Kelly is 10 years old, so I had to remind my sister that we are having a child-free wedding, which was communicated to everyone who was invited to attend. As we ourselves don't have children and we don't want children, so we didn't want children at our wedding, which all of our family and friends have been fine with. Now, I've met Kelly and she is a complete and spoiled brat, and definitely not a child that we would want at our wedding, regardless of if we were having a child-free wedding or not. Now, my sister thought our refusal was down to the cost of adding her as a guest when we've already reached the maximum numbers, so it was initially offered to pay for her place, but I told her it's not about the money, but instead, firstly, it's because I don't like Kelly, and secondly, Brandon overstepped by assuming his child could come to my wedding without even trying to talk to myself or my husband first. I also calmly told her that she knew we were having a child-free wedding and should have told him straight away to avoid this happening, since it's also not fair to our friends and family members who have arranged childcare for their own children to respect our wishes. Well, she's now calling me a jerk because, according to her, it's going to make things very difficult for her when she has to tell him that he can't bring Kelly as she's excited about going to a wedding. But I told her that wasn't my problem, as I am not responsible for him trying to muscle in on a family event that he literally wasn't even invited to in the first place. I've offered to talk to him for her just to try and keep the peace, but she said I would just end up being more of a jerk to him than I already am for telling her that her new boyfriend's child can't come to my wedding. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I do not think you're the jerk at all, because I'm pretty sure your sister knew about this well in advance just like everybody else. She knew along with the rest of the family that no child is going to be attending this wedding. So I'm assuming you spelled this out very clearly, and there literally is no excuse for her to be like, oh, well, this is just not fair, which is such a stupid thing to say because she has known about this for 2 years, and there is no way this is some kind of surprise for your sister. She absolutely knew that you guys were having a child-free wedding, and she knew for a fact this was a feature of what you guys were doing. So for her to falsely claim that, oh wow, you're just gonna ruin everything, you're such a jerk for doing this, it's like, where was this talk like 2 years ago before you put your foot in your mouth? So no, you're not the jerk at all, and I think your sister is in the wrong for not correcting this much sooner, because any backlash that she experiences, in my opinion, is quite literally her own fault. Am I the jerk for reminding my ex-husband that I'm only responsible for our children and not all of his kids? Here's what happened. Okay, so my ex-husband and I have 2 kids together. We divorced about 10 years ago now because I feel like he regressed as a husband and a father during my second pregnancy, and he was even worse when our younger son was born. He was acting like a high school or college kid, or a simple 20-something-year-old with no kids, despite the fact that he's 40 and I'm 35. He spent more time with his friends than with us, and his friends were also treating me more like his mom and expecting me to pick him up from their houses when they needed to get on with stuff. We fought for 50-50 custody of our kids, which he was given, and for the first 2 or 3 years, he had every other weekend and a 2-week period during the summer with them, as well as alternating holidays. He started to be more involved, and eventually he got 50% custody, and it was at that time that I found out he got some woman pregnant, and he realized that with 3 kids, he needed to get his act together. He ended up with full custody of his 3rd child, and then he met his wife. They have 2 more children together now, and there are 2 kids in her life, but I don't believe they are her biological children, who she is also partially supporting. Those 2 kids don't live with them, but apparently the both of them pay for stuff for this child. Now, my ex and I started getting along better, but then his marriage was really rocky. As his marriage got worse, he started treating me like a co-parent to all of his kids. He would bring his other children to custody exchanges and was expecting interactions between me and his other children. Then it was requests to babysit for him and his wife, which of course I never did. Then it was comments about our boys' clothing at my house being sent to his house for his other kids and how we needed to make sure that they had adequate clothing. Well, I told him that there was no we in that situation, and he said, of course there is, we're co-parents. But I said, for our 2, sure, but not for the other kids. It was then requested for me to have his children in my home or to take them out to eat with me and our kids. And finally, it has turned into back to school craziness. I bought supplies for the boys, and he told me I didn't buy nearly enough stuff for everybody. And I was like, okay, hold on, what's that supposed to mean? He then pointed out that what I bought wouldn't be possible to share evenly between all 5 children. But I told him straight up, we don't have 5 children. We have only 2. And it's only the 2 kids that I bought that stuff for. I told him I'm responsible for our children and not his 3 other ones. I told him that he has a wife and they share 2 of those children and the other is in their home, so it is completely up to them. He told me that I know they don't have a lot of money, and I cut him off and I told him that still didn't make his children my problem. He said I can't possibly take care of just 2 of them, not when we're co-parenting and all 5 kids live together 50% of the time. He said that I should be part of the community to help raise these kids, and that keeping my distance like I do is so cold. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, of course you're not the jerk. Your ex-husband is an idiot, and the fact that he's trying to drag you into his mess, in my opinion, is the greatest icing on this cake you could ever ask for. It's legitimate, obvious proof that this guy messed around and absolutely found out what was going to happen when he becomes a father when he's basically not ready for that. For him to somehow try to include you in taking care of these kids that are not yours, while also asking you to buy more school supplies and babysit those kids, that is crazy to me. You are completely justified in telling him, no, I'm not taking care of those kids. Those are not my kids and I'm only taking care of mine. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, because the way your ex-husband is acting is truly insane. Am I the jerk for telling my mother that she is not a first-time mom now that she had a new baby? Because after growing up with my grandparents raising me, as my mom was way too young to have a kid herself at 16 years old, I now feel incredibly offended by her remarks. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 24-year-old male, and I have a good relationship with my mother who's 40 years old, even though, as you can tell from our age, she had me when she was very young and obviously lacked the maturity to raise me. So I live with my grandparents, who were then below the poverty line, for most of my childhood while my mother moved away to get her college education. Now, I don't blame her for her choices. I know that she worked hard to improve herself and to get to a place where she would have the means to raise me right, but it just wasn't until I was 11 or 12 that she was stable enough to get me to live with her. And for reference, my biological dad was never in the picture. Anyways, now my mother is financially comfortable and she is happily married, and she gave birth to her second son a couple of weeks ago. I don't live with her anymore. I mean, we're not in the same city and it is a 2-hour drive away from each other, so it wasn't until yesterday that I managed to visit her and see my half-brother for the first time. I then noticed that she was surrounded by a lot of fancy accessories, so I was like, wait, what are those? And she was like, that's the baby's Lexus stroller and Louis Vuitton diaper bag, of course. So I said something like, you really went overboard, didn't you? And then she said something that really hurt my feelings. She said she now had the chance to experience motherhood for the first time, and that she was feeling like a first-time mom because when she had me, she was so young and unprepared and financially vulnerable. So I told her straight up that she was not a first-time mom and that I couldn't understand why she would even say something like that to me. She then tried to argue that she didn't mean it like that, but I was still very much upset, and I just didn't push it because my stepfather arrived. She then texted me after I left, but I didn't reply yet. I also didn't pick up when she tried to call me, and honestly, it's kind of bothering me. So am I the jerk for holding on to this in the way that I have? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk for getting upset about this, because what she just said is completely offensive. If I grew up in the way that you did, where you were raised by your grandparents instead of your mother, and she was never involved in your life until you were 12 years old? I would be hurt as well. And also, I'm not obtuse, and I totally get that your mom definitely was way too young to raise you, but for her to turn around and be like, oh, I'm a new mother now, that really is hurtful, and I would be super offended if that happened to me, because it's almost like she's just forgetting that the person she's talking to right now is literally the son that she never raised. Sure, she had you when you were 12 years old, but all those years beforehand was with your grandparents. And now you have a step-sibling who literally has all these expensive items and they're actually getting the care that you deserved. And you're literally missing out on that because your mom was completely irresponsible. It really is a tricky situation, and I'm so sorry that you're going through that. Because at the end of the day, that was a very insensitive thing to say. And even though she had you when she was 16 years old, she's now 40 years old and she absolutely should have known better. And in my opinion, she definitely needs to apologize and try to make this situation right. An entitled Karen demands that she's given a discount at a convenience store after she doesn't bring enough money to pay for her stuff. But after the clerk shuts her down and denies this request, this entitled Karen calls up her husband and lies to him by saying that she's being held hostage against her will. And I'm honestly still blown away by this entitled Karen. Here's what happened. Okay, so I just witnessed quite possibly the most entitled interaction of my life. I'm a 40-year-old female, and I was at my local convenience store talking to the owner's daughter as she needed help with homework and was asking everyone if they could help her understand it. And since I'm there almost every single day, they know me very well. Well, in walks the entitled Karen of this story, probably around my age, and she begins gathering items and dumping them on the counter, completely disregarding other customers who were already at it. This goes on for a few minutes and then she goes to pay. At this point, the clerk is serving someone else, and this entitled Karen just interrupts the transaction completely. She says to him, "My items are on the counter, so you shouldn't be serving anyone else, as I'm clearly waiting to be served." Now, I always believe that in order to be served in a store, you had to be physically present in line or at the counter, but maybe I'm wrong. The man being served smiles at this woman and states that he's buying smokes and needs about 30 seconds to complete his transaction and that she can wait in the meantime. Well, this led to much huffing and puffing from the woman, and then she turns to me and says, "Can you believe the audacity of some people?" And at this point, I couldn't help but giggle before I replied. I said, "No, but I do really appreciate the irony." And trust me, she did not get the joke. By now, the guy has left, and the clerk is ringing up her items and putting them into bags. He finishes up and tells her the total, which was about $30-something. Now, apparently, this entitled Karen only had $25 with her, so she told this guy he will take $25 because that is literally all she has. But he tells her that he will willingly take the $25, provided that she removes sufficient items to ensure that it covers her bill. And when he said this lady went on a tantrum that I've honestly never seen before in my life. She started shouting, "I need everything. You can't deprive me of my needs. Who do you think you are? I am calling my husband." And when she said that, the clerk didn't miss a beat. He replied by saying, "Well, make sure he brings his wallet." Now, the kid and I have completely forgotten about the homework, and we're now enjoying the theater production unfolding in front of us. Well, out comes her phone, and she's scrolling furiously, all while repeating, "Oh, just you wait until he gets here." And again, the clerk doesn't miss a beat. He says to her, "I have no other choice but to wait. My shift doesn't end for another 3 hours." She then literally stomps her feet, all while shouting, "But it's only $10. And I'm almost at the point of having to put my fist in my mouth to stifle my laugh. This woman then calls her husband and puts the phone on speaker. And once he answers, she puts on this really pitiful whiny voice. She says to him, "Baby, I'm at this store, and the clerk is holding me and 2 other females hostage. You need to come and rescue us." But this guy must be all too familiar with his wife's antics because he answers in probably the most apathetic way you could possibly imagine. He says to her, "You can't really be held hostage and be allowed to use your phone. So either you didn't have enough money or you're trying to buy alcohol without an ID." Well, at this point, I didn't stifle the laughter, and now this entitled Karen had 3 people openly laughing at her. And then she sheepishly admitted that it was the former. Her husband then says to her, "If you leave the chips, candy, and soda behind that you don't need, and that we have more than enough of in the house, I'm sure you'll have enough money." This entitled Karen then started to protest, but her husband said, "I've told you about doing this kind of stuff. Say one more word and I'm canceling your birthday." She then stomped her foot again as she hung up the phone and told the clerk to remove the suggested items so that she could cover the bill. And I'm honestly still amazed by this entitled Karen's audacity. Wow, talk about not only entitled but super rude. She seriously was like, "Oh, I don't have enough money. You're just gonna have to take what I give you." It's like, no, that's not gonna happen. I'm not gonna risk my job for your stupidity. So honestly, good for that clerk for standing his ground, because the way this Karen was acting was completely out of line. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for asking my roommate and her party guests to leave the living room as they had kept me up until 2 o'clock in the morning and I needed to get up early? Here's what happened. I'm a 22-year-old female and my 20-year-old roommate is having her birthday, and she told me that she would have some friends over, they would go out, and then a couple of friends would stay the night. And I was going to be out the duration of the party, so I couldn't celebrate with her. Well, I got home at around midnight and they weren't home. I went to bed, and it is important to note that my room is considered the den of the house, so it's off the kitchen and living room area, and it has a window to the living room. My roommate and her 7 friends got home shortly after, and they started cleaning the kitchen. Well, I came out of my room, and I asked if they minded leaving it for tomorrow, and they apologized and said they didn't realize I was home yet. Well, they didn't stop cleaning the kitchen, which then took them about 45 minutes, and after that, they started playing video games in the living room. I could tell they were trying to be quiet, but even whispering, I can hear every word, and the lights were shining directly into my room. After about an hour of video games, I came out again, and I asked if they were going to bed soon, explaining that I needed to be up at 8 o'clock in the morning, especially since it was now 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, they said yes and turned off one of the lights but kept playing video games for another 40 minutes. I came out again at this point and I reiterated that I really needed to get some sleep, and if they were going to hang out, could they at least do so in my roommate's room? And at this point, they either left or started getting ready for bed. It's a shared apartment and her birthday, so I don't know if my annoyance was valid. I mean, we don't have an agreed upon curfew. Also, the reason they were in the living room and not my roommate's room is because that is where the TV is. But it may be important to know that I am the one who owns the TV. We haven't lived together very long, but she has her friends over a lot, and this isn't the first time she has disrupted my sleep, and it probably won't be the last. So am I the jerk for asking them to stay out of the living room? What should I do? No, you're not the jerk for telling them to keep quiet, because you have to get up early the next morning, and they kept you up all the way until what, 2 o'clock in the morning? Like, I'm sorry, that is inappropriate and that is not okay. Your roommate should have taken all of her friends into her room, close the door, and then keep it down, relatively speaking. But for them to be making all that noise all at your expense, that in my opinion is completely inappropriate, and I don't blame you for getting upset in the slightest. Am I the jerk for refusing to meet my biological mother in person after I matched up with her on a DNA testing site? Here's what happened. I'm a 24-year-old male and I was adopted when I was 6 years old. I've always felt incredibly lucky because my adoptive parents, who were in their late 20s when they took me in, have been nothing short of amazing. They've loved and supported me as if I were their own flesh and blood, and I've never felt like anything was missing in my life because of being adopted. Growing up, I had very minimal details about my adoption. I know that I was removed from my biological family by social services due to neglect, but honestly nothing specific. I don't remember anything about my life before I was adopted. Well, recently, out of simple curiosity, I decided to sign up for one of those home DNA testing kits. I wasn't looking for a reunion or any deep connection, but I just wanted to know more about my genetic history, like why I was removed from my biological family, and if there were any medical issues I should be aware of. Honestly, I didn't expect to find anyone closely related to me, so it felt like a low-stakes way to get some answers. About 8 weeks ago, after sending off the kit, I remembered to check the results, and to my surprise, I matched with my biological mother. She had sent me a message saying that she was overjoyed that I had done the test, and that she desperately wanted to reconnect with me and the rest of my biological family. She mentioned that she's thought of me every single day, that I was always loved, and even that I have a biological little brother who is very excited to meet me, which is something I didn't even know. Her message was really emotional, and to be honest, it was completely overwhelming. To me, she is a complete stranger, and reading those words didn't stir anything in me other than discomfort. I spent a lot of time crafting a thoughtful response to my biological mother, explaining that while I appreciate her message, I wasn't interested in forming a relationship with her or any of my other biological family members. I made it clear that my reason for doing the DNA test was purely for information. I wanted to understand my past, maybe get some medical history, and learn why I was removed, but that was it. I then apologized if my actions gave her the wrong impression. My biological mother read my message and replied, saying that she'd be willing to give me all the information that I wanted, but only if I agreed to meet her at a cafe to discuss our relationship further. Well, I straight up refused, telling her that I wasn't comfortable with an in-real-life meeting. I offered a phone call as a compromise, but emphasized that I just wanted the information, and then for the both of us to move on with our lives. Well, she outright refused to provide any information unless I agreed to meet with her in person and discuss our relationship. I talked to my best friend about this, and she actually sided with my biological mother, saying that I was being unfair. She argued that by signing up for the DNA site, I had essentially opened the door to this kind of situation, and that refusing to meet with my biological mother now is like playing mind games and leading them on. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you are not the jerk, and let me just start off by saying that your best friend is an idiot. You did not sign up to have any kind of like doors open in your life. You did the whole DNA test in the first place so that you could get information about your medical history and not reconnect with your deadbeat mother. Like seriously, she neglected you and then congratulations, you went off to somebody else. And thank God that you did, because it sounds like your actual family is really good for you. So no, you didn't sign up to have this door open in your life. And also, why is this DNA kit allowing people to message you that you're matching up with? Is there no way of doing this privately without being like, oh yeah, you're related to such and such in like Missouri or something like that? I don't know, maybe that's just me and maybe I'm just a really private individual, but if I was in the original poster's shoes, I would really want some kind of privacy to move forward with this. Also, it is incredibly toxic that your biological mother is refusing to give you any information until you two discuss your relationship. But it's like, wait a second, what relationship is this lady even talking about? She clearly wasn't a good mom, and that's that. And the fact fact that she wouldn't even find some kind of compromise in having a phone call to have this discussion, but like demanded that you be there in person, makes me think that she's trying to set you up to like guilt trip you into her family, and that is absolutely not okay. So no, I don't think you're the jerk, and I think you are absolutely in the right for denying this request. Am I the jerk for telling my family that me and my wife will no longer be going to their monthly family dinners? Because after the awful treatment they showed towards my wife, I've decided that my wife is going to be my priority, and these people will never talk to her like that ever again. Here's what happened. Ever since my dad was a kid, our family has done monthly family dinners, and these are nicer ones than your average family dinner. It's something our family did when my siblings and I were kids as well. We'd have grandparents over and we'd all have a nice dinner together. When my siblings and I grew up, we still did it, only instead of what happened before, where branches broke off over time and did their own thing, they decided we should include partners and spouses, and our kids as a whole. By the time I was 19, the family had decided they would take turns hosting each month to lessen the burden. My wife was excited to be part of them at first. We started during our relationship, and I did the cooking to start, and then she took over after a while because she wanted to. My family had seemingly got along with my wife before this point, but they were overly harsh of her cooking, with the exception of my two younger siblings. She tried to make them happy, but no dice. I told them that they could be kinder, but they said that she should cook better or just cook something different. But my wife didn't make anything they don't eat. But even still, nothing was right. So eventually, she grew frustrated and grew very suspicious. So we hosted a couple of months ago, and I told my wife we were going to pretend I did the cooking, just to try and see what is going on. She told me that she felt like they just weren't fond of her food, but I pointed out nobody had the same amount of complaints as them, and they even criticized the steak and potatoes that they all seemed to go crazy for. She went along with the plan, and when my family thought that I cooked it, guess what? They absolutely loved it. They said it was so good my wife had decided to let a real talent take over, that it was so nice to have something a little bit different, and all this other lovely stuff. But my younger brother and sister were not fooled, and instead of saying anything, they enjoyed watching the rest of the family dig a hole. When the rest of my family heard it was my wife's food and not mine, they tried so hard to backtrack on all the nice stuff. The rest of the dinner went into a tense silence, and my wife's eyes were opened. I told her I was done with these dinners and she was my priority. She felt a little bad, so I told her that sometimes we could still have dinners with my younger brother and sister. And honestly, it's less stress anyways. When we didn't show up to last month's dinner or for this one, my parents and siblings started asking questions. I told them each we weren't going again, but missing two made it sink in. They told me we need to be there, and I said never again. My wife doesn't deserve their disrespect, and I told them they ruined what they wanted by being absolute jerks to her. They said I was overreacting, making very relationship-harming choices, and treating them badly for simply having an issue with my wife's food. They also said to think of future kids and how they'll miss out. Some of it also got to my wife a little bit, which I have tried to reassure her about. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk, but your family and anybody else who's criticizing your wife, they are absolutely the jerk. Because this clearly is not about her cooking skills at all. They clearly just don't like your wife for some kind of reason, and they're only going after her to try and make her feel bad. I mean, you proved your point right then and there by being like, oh yeah, I made the food tonight, but your wife is actually the person who put it all together. And then they try to backtrack and be like, well, we don't actually like it. It's like, what are you talking about? What is wrong with you people? There's clearly some kind of like secret feelings here, and it is so inappropriate that this is the way they choose to act. So no, I don't blame you for not going back to those stupid dinners, because they were clearly just a chance for them to take shots at your wife. And if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. My fiance purposefully used a laundry detergent that I am definitely allergic to and causes me to have many bodily issues. So as a result, I decided to change my will so that he would get nothing that I own if I were to expire because of his negligence. Here's what happened. My fiance and I recently bought a house together, and we got basic things from his family as housewarming gifts. His grandmother gifted us a huge package of laundry detergent, but here is where the problem starts. I am, and used to be, highly allergic against most laundry detergents. I'm not talking about some uncomfortable itchiness or whatever, but stuff like vomiting, diarrhea, losing my eyesight temporarily, and possibly losing consciousness. And I have been hospitalized for this multiple times already. We are currently using two brands that I'm not allergic to, and he keeps complaining that they don't smell that good, which might be true, they aren't really fragrant, and I know he used to drown his clothing in fabric softener just to make them smell nice. I offered to slowly start taking new laundry detergents because he keeps complaining, and those two aren't easily accessible in his home country, but definitely not in the foreseeable future, as I am 8 months pregnant and very afraid of the possible consequences. Well, he agreed, and I thought the topic was done. But then his brother gifted us baby clothing, and my fiance kept commenting on how good they smelled and how badly he wants our clothing to smell like this. I then sorted through them, and after I was around halfway done, I noticed that I felt kind of off. My hands felt weird, my body felt wrong, so I washed every body part that touched those clothes, and I refused to touch them without gloves. So he definitely knows that I'm still allergic against most detergents. Well, he still decided to use the gifted laundry detergent on our towels, and I didn't notice until I started folding them and putting them away. My hands started to get hot and kind of numb and really itchy, and at first, I was afraid that I am now allergic against one of the safe ones until I noticed the gifted one was opened and kind of shoved into the corner, and our other two are just opened and readily available, and I just don't get it. I texted him and I asked him if he used the gifted laundry detergent for anything, and he responded back by saying, "Yes, what's the big deal?" I told him that it's not funny, and he's potentially playing with the life of our unborn son and mine, and why he thought that now of all times is the right time to test my allergies again. He then called me a drama queen and ignored me after that. So in response, I changed my will. My fiance gets nothing now, neither my part of the house nor my other assets. Everything goes to my son, with my family as trustees until he is of age. If something were to happen to both my son and me, my cousins will be the sole inheritors. My fiance was originally meant to be the trustee with different guidelines to make my son's life and his pretty comfortable. So I trashed the old will. I sent the new version to my lawyer to make him look over it and plan to get it to a notary as soon as possible. So am I overreacting for changing my will? What should I do? Okay, I don't think you're totally overreacting here, but I do think the bigger problem here is your fiance. How is he not taking your allergy seriously? Like, this just doesn't make any sense to me, and there's no good reason for him to be like, "Wow, what's the big deal? You're being a drama queen." It's like, buddy, do you want her to expire right then and there and possibly risk your baby in the process? Either this guy really just doesn't care about you, or he is so stupid that he doesn't realize the ramifications of his actions. Because this clearly sounds very serious, and what you're describing literally sounds like an allergic reaction waiting to happen. So no, I don't blame you for changing your will if something does happen to you, but I think the bigger problem is with your fiance. Because if he is not going to take this seriously, especially with your life possibly being at risk, then in my opinion, something absolutely has to change. Am I the jerk for telling my parents that they owe my husband a real and heartfelt apology after they offended him in a way that I will never accept? Here's what happened. I'm a 27-year-old female, and I met my husband, who we will call James, in high school. He was a boy with a bad reputation for dumb stuff, and by dumb stuff, I mean not stuff that he did, but stuff that he didn't do. Stuff like going home or having an adult around him. His mom was an addict who didn't let him come home before midnight on any given night, so he would spend his time in different places, which made adults think poorly of him. By the time people realized it was because he had a crappy mother, they judged him for her actions. My parents were some of those judgmental people, and they would see him out past dark and then make comments. And you know what? They were awful when James and I started dating. I told them they consider themselves Christian and should be more understanding and welcoming of someone who didn't have a good home life, but they would say he wasn't trying, like he could do anything about his mom. They judged him for not going to college. They deemed him lazy for not going, even though he held a job until he was 14, and with the help of a couple that he'd worked for, decided to go to trade school instead. My parents were so awful about it that we didn't even talk for an entire year. Then they reached out via my siblings to apologize to me, and they appeared to accept James and realized that they had been wrong about him. Now, James always got along with my siblings, but he started to get along with my parents too, and it was nice. We then got married 2 years ago, and we welcomed our first baby together in June. But last month we had a big fight. They showed that they kept their opinions to themselves for this long, but they never saw James as a good person. They always saw him as trash. And it all started because James was alone with the baby for an entire day, and they were horrified that I trusted him to watch our child without me there. They spewed such hateful things about James that just weren't true. He is an amazing dad and husband. He's not his mother, and he has never been in trouble with the law. So the fact that they spoke about him like he was some kind of criminal, I mean, that really pissed me off. I then kicked them out and I told them I was done with them. Now, we are still good with my siblings, which is where this post is taking us. We started talking Christmas, and James and I said that we would host them. Well, my mom was trying to get my siblings to ask me if I'd come to Christmas dinner at their house with the baby, and it was then that one sibling said that James and I were hosting. Upon learning that, my mom took this sibling's phone and called me and asked me how I could leave them uninvited. But I told her that if they wanted to be invited to anything ever again, they need to truly truly reflect on their actions and words and make a real and heartfelt apology to James. And that is the only way. It has to be real to him and not to me. And then I hung up on my mom. My parents are now claiming that I'm trying to blackmail them, which I don't think they truly know what that means. And they sent a text, which I assume is from my mom, accusing me of being disrespectful of my parents and saying that I can't demand an apology. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Nope, you are definitely not the jerk. The way your parents are acting is so out of line. They seriously want to try and look at James and be like, oh yeah, you're an awful person, and then freak out when he's watching his own kids, as if the original poster has to be there to make sure he doesn't mess it up. Like, these people even know James's living situation as a kid, and they knew that his mom was a complete deadbeat, and they still want to equate that to him in some kind of way? Like, what are we talking about? He hasn't done anything. He's literally the victim of having an awful upbringing, and it's all stuff that he could not control. So the fact that all these years later they're still trying to hold it over his head, that is crazy to me, and there is no good reason for that. So no, you are not the jerk, and this is absolutely necessary, especially if I was in your shoes. Because if someone's going to disrespect my significant other like that, then they had better apologize if they ever hope to see me or my spouse ever again. An entitled jerk tries to cut past everybody at passport control as he felt his flight was more important than everybody else's. But after taking a red eye just to get where we were at, the over 200 people in line decided that this was not going to happen, as we all started shouting and shaming this guy for ever think of cutting in line. And I've never been more satisfied to watch someone get shamed. Here's what happened. Okay, so I was waiting in the passport line in Iceland, where a lot of flights land very early in the morning, and they have a short layover all before connecting to a new flight. Me and so many others got off our flight that landed at 6:30 in the morning, waiting in passport control, and then had to make a connecting flight that was leaving at 7:20 in the morning. The non-European side of the passport line had nearly 200 plus people waiting in line, and it was going about as fast as it could. And that is incredibly slow, and that's just the reality of it. At 6:30 in the morning, most people took their tiredness and knew the best bet was to wait in line and hope the flight waits for most of its passengers, or just quietly accepts that that connection isn't going to happen. Well, that is except for one entitled family. At the back of the line, this one man goes nearly to the front and pesters this half-awake 20-year-old kid about cutting in front of him because apparently his flight is leaving soon. But it's like, yeah, no kidding, everybody's is. The kid says sure, and I don't blame him. It is just too early to argue. This line cutter then waves to the back and shouts out, "He said we can go in front of him," and 6 other entitled people, maybe his family, come striding their way up to the front of the line. But right at that moment, there was an absolute uproar of everybody around them. People started screaming at them, asking what they think they're doing, and demanding that they go back to where they were and that they are not special. Now, this line cutter tried to reason his way and say to everybody, "Oh, but we have a connection that leaves at 7:30. But the resounding response was everybody saying, "Yeah, we all do too." And it was honestly so poetic. It was gratifying in real time to see this entitled man look around and see 200 plus people in the exact same situation as him, and that he indeed was not very special. He finally sheepishly waved his family back to get back in his old spot at the back of the line. I finally made it through passport control, and I made it to my New York flight at around 7 o'clock, and my European partner was able to get to the gate a little bit quicker and beg the people at the front desk to hold the gate and wait for me there. And I was one of the last ones on the flight. I was in the front third of the passport line, while the line cutters were way behind me. So I don't know if they made their flight or not, but regardless, it was definitely entertaining. Yeah, I can't stand when people try this crap, where they're like, "Oh yeah, can I cut in front of you?" And then when someone says yes, they try to bring in a whole group of people in front of them. Like, if it's just one person, I'm not going to care in the slightest. But the fact that there was an entire family and he really tried to slip past everybody, like, that part alone would have driven me nuts, and I would have been like, oh no, that is definitely not happening. So good for you and the rest of the people in that line for not taking that for a second, because that kind of behavior, in my opinion, is completely inappropriate. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for making my in-laws stay in a hotel after they surprised us on our family vacation? Here's what happened. I'm a 37-year-old female, and I took a beach vacation with my husband and our 3 kids. We also invited his sister, husband, and 2 kids, as we had a detached bedroom from the main house, and we genuinely like hanging out with them. I told her we wanted to keep it small this year since we have a new baby, and I'm pretty fresh postpartum, so I didn't want to make it too stressful. While we were at the beach, we see my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, their stepson, and his girlfriend all pull up. This is a 3-hour drive from where we live, and they came to surprise us at the beach since we haven't seen the stepson in 2 months. My sister-in-law said that they've been planning this for weeks, and she gave them the mile marker. Now, this was a cool surprise, but afterwards, they expected to stay with us in our 1-bedroom, 1-bath rental house with no real doors and only sliding doors. They had no plans for lodging or food, so we had to get to work to make dinner, which really was fine because I had packed extra food. Due to space constraints, I put the baby down for a nap in the restroom, which is also where we had to put the 2 pack-and-plays. When I went back to check on him a little later, the stepson and his girlfriend were in the transparent glass shower together, steps away from my 3-month-old baby. I then went back to the kitchen and I told my sister-in-law that they cannot stay with us. But my husband told them that they could stay because he is out of touch with what that would actually mean. Literally, we're talking 6 adults and 2 toddlers sharing one restroom where 2 babies are sleeping. I then told her what I saw with the stepson and the girlfriend in the shower, again reminding her that it's too many people going in and out of the restroom with 2 kids already asleep in there. Well, she understood and started looking up hotels. Now, at this point, the girlfriend was already scoping out the couch, and she really could have slept there, but after wrestling 2 babies to sleep in the restroom and my 4-year-old to sleep in the actual bed, the couch was the only place I could sit and have a glass of wine at the end of the night in peace. After getting a hotel room, they stayed at the beach house until midnight playing poker on the patio, and they were shouting the entire time. My husband asked his dad to please be quiet since the kids were already sleeping, and my father-in-law loudly shouted, "Shut up," and just kept on playing. And at this point, this has caused major conflict with my husband, as he believes we should have just let 4 additional people stay simply because they are family. But you know what? We paid for half the hotel room, and my sister-in-law paid for the other half. Now, for additional context, we have been to the beach one other time with my sister-in-law last year, but have never been with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. The stepson has been gone for 2 months, but will be in town the next 3 weeks, so it's not like we wouldn't have seen him the next day when we returned. I understand they wanted this to be a fun surprise, but no one considered how this would impact us as a family traveling with 3 small children in a relatively small beach house. So I need to know, am I the jerk for making my in-laws stay in a hotel after they surprised us on our family vacation? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk, because what they did was super rude. Did they really think it would be appropriate for them to all stuff into this 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment? Because basically that's exactly what it is. We have kids sleeping in the bathroom, there's no room for everything, and these people walk in and say, "Okay, here we are." Like, I'm sorry, that's so inappropriate, it's not even funny. And I really think they should have at least had a hotel room ready for them so that they wouldn't impose on you and your family. So no, you are not the jerk, because honestly, I would have done the exact same thing. Am I the jerk for refusing to inherit the family farm and giving it to my younger brother instead? Because right now, my wife is furious with me, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 36-year-old male, and I grew up on a big farm that was owned by my family, who worked as farmers for generations. Much to the detriment of my parents, I worked the farm life from a very young age. I never liked dirt or grime, and farm animals were also never my thing. So to no one's surprise, I left the farm when I turned 18, and I never looked back. I currently live in a big city, and I still love my family very much, and I visit the farm from time to time, but I'm always the happiest when I return to my urban lifestyle. My mother passed away 3 years ago, and 2 months ago, I unexpectedly lost my father due to a work accident. This left my younger brother and I as the sole beneficiaries of their estate, and for the sake of the story, I'll call my brother Tom. I didn't expect to be left with much, since my family helped me out financially more than enough times while they were still alive. I honestly only wanted a couple family trinkets and heirlooms to keep as a keepsake. But to my surprise, as my brother and I sat down with the attorney to discuss our father's will, we discovered that I was left with the majority of the farm, while Tom was left with the rest, meaning that I owned about 3/4 of it and he only had 1/4. Now, the only reason I can fathom behind this decision is that unlike Tom, I have 2 children, and so maybe that's why I was given the bigger share. But I'm not entirely sure, since my children had their own inheritance in the will. Either way, this split of inheritance is absolutely ridiculous, since unlike myself, Tom actually lived on the farm and dedicated his entire life to working on it alongside our parents. I saw that Tom was also shaken up by the decision, so I assured him that I found it absurd as well, and I don't mind forfeiting the land to him. Now, Tom said that I didn't have to do that, but even still, I insisted. After some back and forth on the topic, we mutually agreed to settle this between ourselves on a later date, when everything would be transferred under our names as our parents intended. I recently informed my wife of my decision regarding my inheritance, and she is furious with me for wanting to give most of it up. She is arguing that my decision is impulsive and short-sighted, excited, since the farmland is worth a fortune and I'm just giving it away without a second thought. But I told her that the land is worth a fortune only for those who actually intend on doing something with it. And since I neither intend to sell it or even farm on it, it is effectively useless to me. My wife continued to say that it might be useless to me, but I should think about our children who might one day want to start farming. I told her in that case, I'll transfer only half of the land to Tom, so our children could have 1/4 of the land at their disposal in the hypothetical scenario that they get into farming one day. My wife is now not speaking with me until I reconsider my decision. So I need some unbiased opinions here. Am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk entirely in this situation, but I do think it would be foolish to give this up without having any kind of monetary exchange in some kind of way. Sure, your brother Tom does live on the farm and he does take care of all the land, but I think your wife has a good point as well. You're not thinking about your family and it's kind of short-sighted in the long run. So I think at the bare minimum, in terms of some kind of compromise, splitting it 50-50 really would be a good idea, and this at least gives you something to look forward to in the future. You could even say to your brother, hey, you can use the half that I have, but please give me a portion of whatever you make off of the crops or whatever you want to do with it. So I don't think giving it all up to Tom would be a good idea, but maybe retaining some of it might be something you could pursue. It honestly depends on the nuance of your relationship with Tom and all this other stuff, but regardless, in my opinion, I don't think it would be a good idea to give it all up. And sure, this is your inheritance, but your wife is still your wife, and her opinion absolutely matters. And in my opinion, I think there's a better way than just giving it up in the way that you want to. Am I the jerk for not picking up my former foster daughter in the middle of the night after she called for help after running away? Because right now, my friends are saying that I'm a monster, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. 2 years ago, my wife and I decided to foster. We have 3 children, and we felt terrible that there were kids out in the world that needed a loving home. Our first 2 placements only lasted a few days, but then we were placed with a girl that we will call Olivia. She's 11 years old, and I won't go into personal details about her, but we were her 5th foster home since she was 9 years old. My wife and I literally tried everything to help out, but she was too rebellious. She ran away, she broke things, she stole things, and she lied. I mean, she lied so much that it was insane, and it was months and months of just this. And just when we thought things were getting better, she would just ruin it. The 6th time that she ran away, we had had enough, and at that point, we asked her to be removed. She said, "Oh, I knew you didn't care. I knew you didn't want me. You just wanted the money." And at that moment, my wife and I lost it. We reminded her how we listened to her, took her places that she wanted to go, and we encouraged her. We told her that we didn't spend a dime of the foster care money, and instead, we saved it for her so that she could have money when she turned 18. We even showed her the bank account with thousands of dollars in it and said that when she's 18, she can still have it. I think it was at that point that she realized we cared, but it was way too late then. She went back into the system, and I'm honestly not sure what happened. Life then eventually went on. We had another baby, we moved a few miles away, but then last Saturday night, my wife received a call from Olivia, who at this point is now 13 years old. She put it on speakerphone, and apparently Olivia ran away from another foster home and had been living on the streets for days. Eventually, she made it to our old neighborhood, but I told her that we moved. She asked us if we could pick her up from a certain location and also wanted to know if we would take her in. She was crying and saying that she loved the kids and that she misses my wife's cooking and that she wants me to teach her how to play the piano. I felt bad for her, but taking her back was absolutely impossible. We just feared that she would run away again. So we told her that we would be there, but we called the police instead and they took her in. The police contacted us a few days later saying that Olivia's foster parents were pressing charges. She stole a few things, and Olivia had a vape on her with some illegal substances in it. We were told that she would probably go to juvenile detention until she's 18 years old, and this is what we were told, although we're not sure about what will happen. They then asked us if we wanted any updates, and we just declined. We also asked them not to have her contact us ever again. Well, today we were telling some friends about this, and while some agreed with us, a few people called us monsters. One of our friends said, "I would have scooped that baby up and kept her." Now, legally, there was nothing we could do, but are we jerks for not helping her out? What should I do? Okay, first and foremost, I want to say that this situation is very sad. Olivia clearly has a really rough upbringing, and she's lashing out and literally pushing everybody away. That is, until you and your wife stepped in and actually showed her some love. This clearly left an impact on her because when she was out on the street, she looked to you two to try and let her back in the house. But in my opinion, at that point, it is too little too late. We're talking 2 years later, and with both of you having a baby in the house. You already tried to let her in once, and she ruined that opportunity, and you had to move on with your life. So in my opinion, I think it would have been a terrible idea to let her back in. She's She's clearly not in a good place, and there's not much else you can do to try and help her out. And that doesn't mean that you don't care, but instead it means that you're preserving your peace and you're protecting your children. Like the fact that she has illegal substances in a vape and that she's stealing stuff from another house, in my opinion, is more than enough reason for me to be like, no, I'm sorry, but you can't live with us. And yes, it is unfair to Olivia, but you need to protect your family and your kids. And in my opinion, I think it would be a terrible idea to let her back in your house. Am I the jerk for telling my mom that she got exactly what she deserved after she dug through my grandma's past in a way that not only offended her, but also banned her from ever seeing her again in the retirement community that she currently lives in? Here's what happened. So my mom went behind my grandmother's back several months ago and tracked down my grandma's half-sister to try and force a reconciliation between them, despite knowing that grandma did not want to and did not claim her half-sister as a real sibling. Well, my grandma was furious, and she told my mom that the half-sister is just some other woman's child and not her real sibling, and her chance to have siblings passed away with her mom. After my great-grandmother passed away, my great-grandfather remarried someone who had a very extensive reputation for going after married and widowed men. My grandma thought the woman was disgusting, and it wasn't helped by the fact that my great-grandpa's new wife was also the other woman to one of the parents of grandma's friends, so the hatred already existed. They went on to have a daughter together who grandma never looked at as anything other than this woman's daughter, and she saw her dad as a traitor and disgusting for going after someone like his wife, so she never formed any connection with her, and she moved out at like 16 years old in order to get away from under them. My great-grandpa's wife's reputation proved to be more than true, because even while married to my great-grandpa, there were more and more married or widowed men who were going in and out of that house. At some point several years ago, after grandma moved out, her half-sister reached out and asked if she would take her because she wasn't happy at home, and grandma just said no. And that was the last time they spoke. My mom and her siblings grew up knowing that grandma had a half-sister that she wanted nothing to do with. But sometime during her life, mom decided she could be the one to change grandma's mind, and she waited until grandma was older and grandpa was gone, and she's been living alone for 2 years now in a retirement community. She tracked down the half-sister and got that woman's hopes up because she always hoped to have a relationship with my grandma, and then showed up at my grandma's house with the half-sister. And trust me, it didn't go well. The half-sister left heartbroken, and my grandma tore my mom a new one. I have never seen my grandma actually angry before. She called my mom a bratty little know-it-all who thought she could ignore people's wishes and boundaries, and she told mom that she couldn't even look at her. My mom argued back that grandma has a sister and she should know her before it's too late. Grandma then sent me to the store to grab some snacks, and by the time I got back, grandma told mom that she was not welcome back there ever again. Now, my mom thought that grandma would calm down, but she learned a couple of weeks ago when she tried to visit that she was banned from the community, and my mom was horrified. At home, she wouldn't stop talking about it, and I told her she got what was coming to her, especially with what she did. I told her if I did something like that, she would ground me so fast. But just because she's an adult, she thought she could get away with it. Well, my mom told me that I shouldn't stick my nose into her business, and that I have zero right to judge her. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? You're definitely not the jerk, but your mom absolutely is. She dug up your grandmother's past, and this is all after having a literal lifetime of knowing that this is a taboo subject. This is completely against your grandmother's wishes, and it really does throw a wrench in the wheel in the family, because now your mom is literally physically banned from the community that your grandma lives in. And that just really sucks. It really sucks overall, because all your mom had to do was just not do this and everything would be fine. Or at least have some kind of conversation with the grandma to be like, hey, maybe we could do this. Maybe there's some time to still like find some kind of connection with this lady. Or at least like revisit her opinion on this instead of just being like, yeah, this is what we're gonna do. So to that end, I really don't blame you for speaking up, because if that was my mom doing that to my grandma, I absolutely would have lost my mind and been like, yeah, you got exactly what you deserved. Because at the end of the day, she absolutely did. And the fact that she went behind your grandmother's back to do this in the first place, in my opinion, is incredibly disrespectful. Am I the jerk for throwing a gift from my dad's wife in the trash all before I moved out of the house simply because of the way they treated me growing up? Here's what happened. I'm an 18-year-old male, and I moved out of my dad's house last month, which was the day after I turned 18. I no longer live in the same town, and instead, I moved in with 3 of my friends who are all starting college next month, and I'm about to start trade school. I'm working until trade school starts to afford rent and food. The 4 of us are all splitting the cost between us, and I did not take money from my dad. The day day I left, my dad's wife gave me this photo album saying it was a growing up gift. And this photo album was photos of the 7 years since she and dad married. Now, I did not appreciate the gift, nor did I want it, which I told her straight to her face. She then told me to take it and I should have family photos when I moved out. But before I left, I threw the album into the trash. Now, to explain why I did this, I need to give some background. When I was 10 years old, my mom passed away. She had an allergic reaction while we were out for a celebratory dinner for my dad, and she passed away on the way to the hospital. Mom really was the glue that held us together, and dad and I were never very close before she died. But 6 weeks later, my dad had already met his wife, and they boxed up all of my mom's things, her clothing, jewelry, photos of her phone, keys, literally anything that was just hers, and they brought it all to the dump. I never got anything, and neither did any of her family. I was furious and will never forgive my dad for what he did. The very next day, he moved that woman in, and they were married 4 months later, while also having a small but actual formal wedding. They dragged me to it and pretended everything was fine and normal. She even gave a speech about being so excited to have a son of her own and all the adventures that we're gonna have together. When I was 12 years old, I got copies of a couple of photos of mom from extended family, and I put them in my room. Well, my dad's wife found the photos, and she removed them, saying that I didn't need those, and that I would be bringing down everybody in the house for having them. Well, when she said that, I yelled at her and I cursed at her, wishing that she didn't exist and that she was erased, but my dad yelled at me for disrespecting his wife. And then I told him that day that I wish that he had passed away instead of my mom. He then told me that he wished he'd let my grandparents take me, which was right after the fight they had about my mom's stuff going to the dump. And you know what? I told him that I wish he had. The 7 years of living with the two of them were an absolute nightmare, and I'm so glad that I'm gone. I have no respect for either of them, and I don't care that my dad lost someone too, because he threw her away, and not just from him. After I settled into my apartment, dad suddenly remembered my number for the first time in 3 years and called me out for upsetting and disrespecting his wife by throwing her gift away. He told me that she did it out of love, but I just ignored it. She sent me a text on dad's phone telling me that I should be surrounded by happy family memories, which was why she made the album in the first place. I then sent a photo of my room, which has photos of my mom, which are ones that I got copies of. And this was the only reply I made. But I then got several text messages, some from an unknown number after I blocked dad, saying that I was acting spitefully. So truly, I really need to know, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you're not the jerk at all. I think I would have reacted the exact same way, especially if my family tried to erase my mom. Like seriously, he threw all of her stuff away in the dump. He didn't even think to be like, hey, let's go through it together as a family. It seems like he went from, okay, my wife passed away, to then saying, okay, time to get rid of all of her stuff in like what, a month's time? Like sure, I understand people wanting to move on with their life, but the way he did it is so toxic. It's not okay. Like it really does seem like he didn't care about her at all. So no, I don't think you're the jerk at all for throwing away those photos, because the way your dad and his wife acted towards you growing up, in my opinion, is completely unfair. My entitled mom demands that I change the name of my baby, as she absolutely hates it, claiming that my wife and her family have twisted my sense of obligation to family tradition by picking a name that's outside of what she would approve of. Here's what happened. My wife and I are both in our late 20s, and we had our first child together in June. Before he was born, there was a lot of talk about names from different family members on both sides, but the pressure by far was definitely on my side specifically. We didn't tell a soul what the name would be until our son was born and we had left the hospital. And needless to say, my parents were disappointed when we announced our son's name. My family is very traditional in how they named us. We were each named after grandparents, and that's how they feel everyone should name their kids. My wife's family doesn't have a tradition when it comes to naming babies. They just name them and then go along. There's no fuss or insisting on certain names. But my wife's side tends to favor more uncommon and unusual names. And honestly, my wife and I's taste tends to lean a little bit more to her side than to mine, which is how we ended up picking the name that we chose for our son. This was not something my parents liked because they expected our son to be either Jack, which is my dad, or Parker, who is my father-in-law. But I know they were expecting a little Jack to be born, so that added to their reaction. So they quizzed us on our choice to break tradition, and I told them it wasn't a tradition my wife's family used, and we decided we weren't going to have one either. Over the last couple of months, both parents have questioned why we did this, and have wanted to discuss other names for future babies. And my mom has been the worst by far. She asked why we went with something so unlike the names we have in our own family, and I told her our family wasn't the only family involved, but that we also didn't take the family's taste into account. We just went with what we liked. liked. She then pointed out that our taste was a lot more like my in-laws, and I said yes, but that it wasn't about my in-laws and their taste. It was about what my wife and I wanted. I told her I was done discussing it, and ever since that point, I now change the topic or end the conversation when she brings it up or refuses to let it go. We had a little naming ceremony on Saturday, and my mom decided that she was going to dig in her heels about the name, and she straight up told me that we picked a stupid name and that she hated it. She then said something that honestly blew my mind. She demanded that we change it into something like Jack or Parker. She told me that we had no business breaking a long-held family tradition, and that there's a reason those traditions are in place so that foolish people can't name their babies the worst names imaginable. She also said that my in-laws must be so smug, thinking that they will have at least 2 stupidly named grandkids, just like they have with all their other stupidly named kids. And when she said that, I lost my temper. I told her to shut up, and we're not naming our kids like she and dad named me and my siblings, and I told her that she would need to leave and learn to be more respectful because I would not take those insults against my wife or her family lying down. Well, my mom hated being told to shut up, and she said that I had no excuse for rudeness to her face, but I think the way she was acting was crazy. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Wow, your parents are super obsessed about what you're naming your own kid. Like seriously, who are they to say what you can and cannot name your child? For starters, in my opinion, I think traditions like this are really dumb, and it's mostly just annoying for people who are like, okay, I want to name my kid something other than Jack or Parker, which by the way, those are like totally fine names, but I would rather give that name to a kid if I really wanted to give it to them, instead of feeling obligated by my weird controlling parents, which this is all this is, by the way. They're trying to act like they have some kind of like hold over the family and what you can and can't do, but in reality, they have no say in the matter. And the fact that she's attacking your wife and her family and trying to be like, wow, this is their fault. They must be so smug for all the dumb names they're giving out. Like that to me is perfect evidence that they have sour grapes about the whole situation, and I'm willing to bet that it all goes back to the fact that they have literally no say in your life any longer. So honestly, I don't think you're the jerk at all, and I know if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. I'm tired of dealing with entitled parents at my job because they make my life as a receptionist at a hotel an absolute nightmare. Here's what happened. I'm a 31-year-old female and I work as a receptionist in a hotel in a small town on the Italian coast. I've been doing this job for 4 years and never before have we had to endure the arrogance of entitled parents like this year. When booking the stay, we make it clear right away that check-in is not even possible before 2:30 p.m. And that's because the hotel where I work at has about 70 rooms and we are constantly full. So the housekeeping staff needs a bit of time to clean the rooms, considering that checkout is by 11 in the morning. Our housekeeping staff is amazing. They're fast and efficient, but they still need a few hours to clean 70 plus rooms. Well, this year there have been dozens, and I mean dozens of instances where guests have shown up at about 7 o'clock in the morning demanding that we give them their room early because they'll say to us, oh, we have small children who suffer in the heat. And on several occasions, some of these arrogant jerks even suggested that we go and kick previous guests out of the bed literally at 7 o'clock in the morning just to make it work for them and their stupid spawn. And how does one even think about suggesting such a thing? Were they raised by wolves? Aren't they disgusted with themselves to even suggest such a thing? I mean, what is up with these people and their massive narcissism? Also, these entitled jerks scream all the time about how their small children can't withstand the heat and that they need their rooms immediately, as if their poor planning is my concern. And then I see them dragging their newborn babies to the beach at noon sharp, all under the hot, blazing sun at nearly 40 degrees Celsius. Like, are you actually concerned about the safety of your kid or not? And is it really necessary to have a beach holiday in August during a heat wave with such a small child and even worse planning? I am so sick of these people. They firmly believe that parenthood gives them a pass to be horrible to everybody and have special privileges everywhere they go. And I think that entitled parents are truly making the world a horrible place to live in the first place. Yeah, that kind of behavior is super toxic, and I don't blame you for getting frustrated. I can only imagine dealing with people on a daily basis, especially in a hotel off the Italian coast. Like, that has seriously got to be an absolute nightmare to put up with. And I just love the point that the original poster makes, because these entitled parents' poor planning is really at fault here and not the hotel itself. Like, they need time to clean the rooms up. They can't just give you a sloppy room and be like, okay, here you go, because then the opposite will happen and they'll just complain and be like, wow, you didn't even clean our rooms. And it's like, yeah, of course, because you demanded it right away. So truly, I have to agree with the original poster, because because I also think that entitled parents make this world just a little bit worse. My entitled grandma tries to move in with me and my family after she falls on hard times, and despite the fact that she mistreated my dad his entire childhood, my parents took the firm stance that she will not be moving in with us. Here's what happened. To start things out, I knew my grandparents told my dad to move out when he was young, but the version my dad told me was that this happened when he finished high school and applied for a job. But in reality, the real version is way worse. My grandmother married young and had my dad 6 months after the wedding. Back then, when you were expecting, you married after parents of both parties made a deal. So this is what happened here. When my dad was born, his father went to a party because he had a son. And when my dad was 6 days old, there was an accident. His dad was on a bike and there was an accident with the truck, with only the truck driver surviving. There was no insurance because my grandfather was very drunk. So the situation for my grandmother was not easy. There was no job, no money, and she had an infant. When my dad was 7, his grandparents arranged a marriage for their daughter. My step-grandfather was scared of being a father as a young adult, but did whatever possible with his limited resources. And my grandmother got odd jobs, became an alcoholic, and then got fired. And it happened so many times that later they decided she was to be a stay-at-home mom and take care of her kids, which basically made my dad as a replacement parent for his step-siblings. Now, here is where it gets really bad. When my dad was 16 years old and in high school, he wasn't a bad student, but his younger brothers and sisters were bad students. One of his younger brothers wasn't promoted to the next class in elementary school, and my grandmother got mad and forced my dad out. She said to him to take your clothes and get out, and she would scream at him, "We will see how long you stay in high school now." Back then, there were laws that kids were to stay in school until they were 18, and it was illegal to hire a minor. So my dad got some odd jobs, and the parents of his schoolmates let him stay for several weeks, and one of his teachers ended up letting him stay. He then got a lawyer to check and see if emancipation was allowed in this case, but my grandmother went to court and lied that she never forced him out and that he was just a bad son. He was always drinking, he had bad grades, he was always playing around and beating his siblings and so on. And despite having his school records and somehow records of his siblings, he still did not have any options with emancipation. The judge was in a position to force my grandmother to take my dad in but refused. My step-grandfather promised and delivered money every month, and he was a better parent than my grandmother ever was. My dad finished up with high school, and there was talk about university, but then he got a job. He found a place to stay, and then he met my mom. And after the wedding, they first lived with my grandparents, and supposedly, many times strangers would arrive at the house and ask for money that my relatives were supposed to pay. But thankfully, all of this ended when my parents got their own place. Several years go by of no contact, and then eventually my stepfather passed away. They owned a flat that my grandmother inherited, and there was no mortgage. Also, she had no retirement money because she mostly didn't work, but according to our lawyer, she had about 80% of her husband's retirement money, so it was all set. She then contacted my dad once to tell him that he would never get the flat or his stepfather's money. Fast forward several more years later, and suddenly a clerk from a hospital calls. My grandmother had diabetes, and she never got treated for it, and she just kept on drinking. And more to the point, she had money for vodka, but not for utilities or rent. She would get many notifications and then ignore them and then just drink some more. At a certain point, she was so far into debt that it was more than the value of her flat, so she lost it. And she then tried to say that her good kids had money for vodka, but not for their mom. Now, her only daughter was married and wanted to take out a credit, bail my grandmother out, and get that flat for her own kids. But my grandmother didn't sign a contract for that flat. She said, "Just give me money and I will pay my debts." So my uncle blocked the transaction. He wanted to help and pay, but not give money when my grandmother takes all and promises to pay. So she lost that flat and some friends took her in. She badmouthed my dad and her daughter and her son-in-law. Then one friend saw her real character and asked another person to take her in, and so on and so forth. Now, when my grandma actually found someone to properly stay with, she would be there with some of her sons and they were drinking and a lot of valuable items would be missing. Now, the person that she had stolen all this stuff from would say nothing because it was one person against several drunk people, but then just decided to wait, and when the sons went away, they called paramedics for an elderly lady with diabetes. She wasn't lucid and they weren't sure if it was diabetes or the alcohol. Eventually, the cops arrived and they actually tried to blame the friend for all of this going down in their house, but they had a recording of themselves begging the sons not to share alcohol with my grandmother, so the cops couldn't arrest the host, and instead the paramedics took my grandmother to the hospital. And as a result, she lost both of her legs. The hospital kept her for several weeks, and she gave my parents' address as her own, thus eventually leading to this hospital clerk calling my parents. They had to show all the documents and explain my grandmother grandmother herself went no contact, took credits from my dad, kept money that he had to pay back, and took a home her parents left him, and a lot more. Now, the hospital couldn't demand that my parents accept her, and actually my dad wanted to, but my mom put her foot down. She asked, "What will you do when your mom invites your brothers and one of them is so drunk that he hurts me or your daughter?" Well, as you can probably guess, none of the good sons took her in. The hospital clerk tried to put her in a home for elderly people, but it just didn't work. There was a rule that demanded no alcohol, which she absolutely disregarded. She invited her sons, they had vodka, and some more items went missing from many rooms, so I'm sure you can see why this is just not a good combination. Eventually, her daughter took her in, and they moved to another place, and they went to live with the son-in-law's parents. But the good thing is that it was 180 kilometers from our city, so there was hope that all the stepbrothers of my dad wouldn't visit. I mean, they had no jobs, some money from Adult Protective Services, which they literally just used for vodka, and while they would promise a lot, they never visited and they just never got around to it. Now, I know my parents visited several times, and they left some money for my uncle, who used it to buy some medical supplies or to hire a nurse, because he said that if he gave it to my aunt, she would give the money to her mother, who would then use it to drink. Eventually, my grandmother passed away there and was buried locally. All of the sons that would basically party with her went to her funeral, and they started a huge fight. They demanded money from my parents and my aunt and uncle, and it's all just such a huge mess. But honestly, overall, I'm so blown away by the way my grandmother treated my dad, as well as the awful life that she decided to live. Wow, your grandma absolutely sounds like a piece of garbage. She treated your dad like crap, like literally most of his life, and then at her lowest point, after doing so much damage, she tried to basically forward all of her medical problems and bills and all this other stuff over to your parents for them to take care of. And it's like, wow, isn't that ironic? The grandma treats her son like crap pretty much his entire life, but then suddenly when the shoe's on the other foot, she's definitely in some kind of need. So hopefully you and your family can find peace in this entire situation, because what you described sounds truly awful. An entitled Karen screams at me after I snap at her kid for screaming in my ear. And despite the fact that this Karen basically allowed her kid to run around and scream like crazy, she still had the audacity to get in my face and scream at me, all because I corrected her stupid kid. Here's what happened. So this happened a few years ago at a major airport in the United States. I worked as a pilot for an airline, and in the course of my duties, I ride our aircraft to and from home to our crew base. I often did this out of uniform, with my only identifying feature being my work ID and my lanyard. My last flight before time off put us on the ground around noon, and being off duty, I immediately changed out of my uniform and I took a seat from the gate where my flight home would depart from. Behind me, there was a rambunctious child who was using the seat as her personal playground and would randomly squeal and scream while doing so. Now, while this is annoying, and the squeals are like nails on a chalkboard to me, it's the reality of things. So I just ignore it and I browse through my tablet. Well, the next thing I know, I catch a full scream into my ear. I turn my head back and the kid is literally a couple of centimeters from my face and is hanging off the back of my chair. Well, I immediately snapped at the kid. I said to her, "Do not scream into my ear." Well, that is when the entitled Karen mother of the story, who was letting all of this happen, lose her mind. She darts up, standing over the seat behind me, yelling at me, saying, "Don't you dare yell at my kid, how dare you?" Meanwhile, the kid has a shocked look on her face, but settles down and goes silent. This entitled Karen goes on, trying to goad me into arguing with her, and doing everything but actually putting hands on me to escalate this into a physical fight. She even tries to encourage her kid to scream again, to which the kid just sat there quietly, and an initial stare at her for a few seconds, then went back to ignoring her and the situation, and just going back to looking at my tablet. She continues having a meltdown for about 10 minutes, before the man with her collected her, the kid, all of their things, and then went elsewhere. Now, I feel bad for the kid, as I cannot see her future ending well with this sort of guidance. It was also a shame that the mother flipped out, as I likely would have given the kid wings that my company supplies us after the kid had calmed down. But regardless, I'm honestly still in shock by the way this lady acted. Yeah, this is a classic case of if you don't discipline your kid, someone else definitely will, because this kid had no right to be screaming and jumping all over the place. Like, why would you let your kid just jump all over the place like that? I can understand if you let that happen at home and you're just like, whatever, do whatever you want. But if you're in public, in my opinion, it is your responsibility and yours only to discipline your kid and say, hey, you cannot act like that in public. And with enough practice, it really is possible to keep them under control. And sure, there's extenuating circumstances across the board that would be like, no, but what about this situation? But I really think that generally speaking, it absolutely is possible. So honestly, good for the original poster for putting this kid and this entitled Karen in their place. There is no reason you should have to put up with that kid literally screaming in your ear. here, because that is inappropriate and absolutely should not be tolerated. Am I the jerk for not letting my boyfriend grieve and for getting upset that he's not helping me in my day-to-day activities? Because right now I'm very frustrated and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of backstory, my boyfriend's grandfather passed away 4 days ago. When he passed, we met all of his family at a small emergency room to say our goodbyes. And the emergency room made everybody wear masks due to sickness going around the hospital. So 2 days ago, I started to feel really bad body aches and I had a sore throat. And keep in mind, I'm 18 weeks pregnant. I told him how I felt and he basically said he doesn't want to get sick because his grandfather's funeral is coming up. Well, I told him I was feeling weak as well as hungry and I didn't want to drive myself home and then be hungry once I got there. I asked him if he was okay with helping me for the night and I'll just leave in the morning. Basically, just bring me some food to the room so I wouldn't contaminate any other areas of the house. He told me he had a lot on his mind and wasn't in the right headspace to help me out. So I told him I understand and then I left. When I got home, I made something small to eat and then I went to sleep. And then yesterday morning, he calls in and checks on me. I tell him how I feel more sick than when I left and he just says okay. The rest of the day, he has family over until about 3 o'clock in the morning, just offering their condolences and keeping his family company. Around 4 p.m., I called and asked him for help to see if he could bring me something to eat because all I had the strength to get myself were just snacks like chips and cereal. No real meals, and I just wanted to make sure that I had enough in me for the baby. Well, he just basically brushed me off, saying he has no idea how he could help and said I was selfish for not thinking about him grieving and how he was stressed and had a million things on his mind. He also told me that I was being evil because I said he wasn't helping me at all. After that, I just hung up. He then called me at 3 o'clock in the morning when everyone left to sleep, and he was on the phone with me for maybe about 20 minutes, but then he hung up later and said he would call me back, but he didn't. Now I just don't want to speak to him at all, but I don't want to cause him more stress when he's already sad about his grandfather. So I want to know if I'm the jerk here for not respecting his time for grieving. Also, would I be the jerk for not talking to him today? I know how it feels to lose your grandfather when you're so close with him, but at the same time, I just asked for a little bit of help and I don't feel like I was asking him for a lot. Most medications you can't take during pregnancy because they have had bad side effects for the fetus. So I've just been waiting it out and he knows that as well. What should I do? Before we go any further, the original poster has an update for us. Here's what they had to say. Okay, so it's been decided that I'm the jerk here and honestly, that is fine. But for the ones wondering about DoorDash and other options, I recently just paid my bills and I made groceries for his place since I would be there with him during this time. So unfortunately, I cannot afford DoorDash at the moment, but that would have been my first option. I didn't bring any food with me because all of the groceries really have been cooked besides snacks. And also, I know he is grieving and I would have never said anything, but if he was okay enough to do favors for others yesterday, he could have picked up some food and left it at my doorstep. He didn't even have to come inside. Also, I have family and friends, but getting them to do things for me is a bit of a challenge. And I learned a while ago just to stop asking. It's really just been me and him caring for one another. But after reading some of your comments, I understand how I came off as needy. Also, I need to say that I do speak to my family every day and we are really close in that way. I see them every week as well, so there is no bad blood between us. Also, my friends don't live close to me where it's easy to just drop off food and go, but on the other hand, my parents do. But now that I'm an adult, and since my other siblings have had children, my parents tend to them. I have 2 siblings who aren't in their kids' lives at the moment due to their own faults, so my parents step in. When I ask for help where they have to physically do something for me, it's always with them saying like, oh, I'm too tired for this, or it's, oh, I just don't feel like doing that right now. But when they ask me, they feel like I'm just supposed to do whatever it is that they ask. So yeah, I never call on them first. I call on my boyfriend and we've been together for over 3 years. Okay, for starters, I absolutely think the original poster is the jerk, but also I just don't think they get it. Like literally, they've explained away and they've given an update of some kind, but I think they're completely missing the point. So let me try and spell it out. Your boyfriend is grieving the loss of a family member. He does not have time to wait on you hand and foot. Also, he's not going to be around you because he doesn't want to get sick. He wants to be there for the funeral and be there around his family right now especially. So for you to be like, wow, why couldn't you stop what you're doing and get me food? Or just even instigate the idea of giving him the silent treatment right now of all times? Like seriously, you are absolutely the jerk. And the fact that you're not seeing it, in my opinion, is such a shame because I guarantee you if the shoe was on the other foot, you would be feeling a certain kind of way. So in my opinion, yes, you're absolutely the jerk, and I just don't think it's appropriate for anybody to act like that in the slightest. An entitled Karen tries to force her kid to cross 5 lanes of traffic as a form of practice from coming home from school. But once I saw that, I decided to intervene, getting this Karen in more trouble than she ever anticipated. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, I currently live in a suburb in Texas. My son's primary school is on a large stretch of road, and it is 5 lanes, and the speed limit is 70 miles an hour, but during school zone hours, it's 30 miles an hour. The school sits right in the middle, and the crosswalks are at least half a mile each way, maybe more. The point is, it's not close. One's closer than the other, but it's not a brisk walk. It is definitely a trek. This road is also very popular and houses all tiers of public education. There are giant trucks, working trucks, and all manner of cars at any given hour, and it is super backed up during school hours. And so here we are. My husband is pulling out of the school, and it is a chore because of the heavy traffic. He then notices a kid right next to us on the sidewalk, showing signs of looking down these 5 lanes. My husband then says, "Oh, he better not be trying to cross the street. What is going on?" And he hardly mentions that before slamming the pedal. The kid had stepped into the road, and my husband pulled immediately into the street to stop people on that lane. The kid then pulls back. I then jump out of the car and I yell at the kid to immediately discourage anything. And let me tell you something, this kid was not fine. I couldn't even get a word out of him, and he couldn't explain to me what he was doing. He was panicking, blubbering, and looking to the other side, and I had to hold him just so he would stop crying. He kept looking towards a cyclist on the other side of the road. She was yelling at me, and you could not hear over the 5 lanes even if you wanted to. But I figured it was his mom, so I asked her, "Do you want me to drive him to you?" Well, she did not like that. This crazy Karen barged down those 5 lanes, thus further worsening public opinion over cyclists. She was in her entire gear, and yet she left her bike on the other side. She just tossed it down. She then stormed onto the road holding out her hand. The cars rolled to a stop, with the last one being a gigantic Texas truck whose hood was at her shoulder. This entitled Karen then looks at me and says, "What is the problem here?" And she actually had the audacity to ask me that. I then look at her and I say, "Are you his mother?" And I lay down the narrative to judge her character above her preferred mode of transportation. This entitled Karen then says, "Yes, I am." And at this point, she started rambling, and I honestly could not believe what I was hearing, so I just cut her off. I said to her, "Okay, but he was trying to cross the street." And it was at this moment that this lady said something that truly blew my mind. She looked at me and said, "I know, we are practicing." And let me tell you something, I can't tell you the way my heart sank to hear that this woman planned to put her 8-year-old son into this situation and fully intended for him to do so on his own, as if it takes exposure therapy to get over one's fear of getting hit by a car. Now, it's important to note that I am not a busybody. I disengage with people whose tone screams entitlement, and this really is a skill that you master in Texas. But I am, however, shamelessly confrontational, especially when it involves a child who can't defend themselves. I then turn towards my husband, who had now parked back inside the school lot, and I yell to him, "Oh, it's okay. They're just practicing endangering the life of a child." But he just screamed back by saying, "What?" Because, you know, the 5 lanes of traffic, no one can hear anything. But I just pretended that he could hear me. I said to him, "I know, who does that? Not me, you know, a normal person." Because I was just being an absolute jerk right back to that lady. She had taken her son to the side, knelt and held his hands, and was rambling to him her crazy nonsense about me. Once those people go off, you can't control the energy they spend on you and keep them engaged in some kind of way. I wanted her to stay there because I wasn't going to let it go. But I really needed the good guys though, those who were forced by the fires of crazy. So I stormed right into the school building and knocked on the office window, where 3 lovely women of varying levels of administrative power were already there, and I opened up dramatically again. I said to them, "This is urgent. A kid tried to cross the street on his own. He almost got hit by a car. I stopped him and his mother told me that they were practicing." Well, those women were in disbelief, as those with functioning amygdalas would typically be. They tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, but once I pointed out that she was in her cyclist gear and her bike was 5 lanes away, they started to call in the cavalry. The lady most intent on stopping her took the walkie-talkie from the other lady and stormed out. The now walkie-talkie-less lady asked me for a bit more about what happened, and I reiterated my brief experience, emphasizing the road being crossed right there where the bike lay, and she finally believed that it happened. They mostly talked to themselves about their rules for children on that road, and it was nice to hear they already had them down to specifics, as one would assume. I mean, it was the whole reason I went to go be a dirty snitch. I only knew that jaywalking was illegal in all of Texas, and I break it all the time myself on the road, but it's a special kind of demented to make a young child do it on his own, especially in Texas, where one more lane is our only understanding of infrastructure, right next to sky roads, and your tax money builds my buddy's privatized tolls. From here on, it wasn't my problem anymore. I only lingered slowly like the smug jerk that I am, just to make sure the walkie-talkie lady managed to engage the mother. When we drove past them, the mother glared daggers at me while yelling at the walkie-talkie lady. So I waved at her with a warm smile. And bless her heart, she actually thinks that she's right. Deep down though, I'm still panicked that it even happened. I know the school will handle it. They have a really good security system involving rules and volunteers because sadly, that's what we've needed to resort to since other previous incidents in the state. They will make that lady know that she's no exception to these keep the child alive rules as long as she's on their property, because anywhere else she can pretty much do whatever she wants. And honestly, that last part is what keeps me up at night. That poor kid was a mess when I talked to him. He couldn't communicate with me and he was terrified of his mother, but the least I can do is keep an eye out for him each day after school, just to make sure that this entitled Karen doesn't try that stunt ever again. That is a crazy situation. I honestly cannot believe someone would make their son do that. We're talking 5 lanes of traffic in Texas of all places. And while I've never lived in Texas, I have driven there, and let me tell you something, some people down there cannot drive in the slightest. I'm not trying to make generalizations, but seriously, it was really bad when I went there to visit friends. So when this original poster talks about their roads really being awful, I definitely believe them. But you know what? Good for the original poster and their husband for actually having some kind of sense about them to stop and make sure that this kid was all right, because that entitled Karen absolutely put their kid in danger. And I'm sure that if you didn't intervene, something bad definitely could have happened. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled managers give me some tasks that are literally impossible to do all in the same day. And despite calling for help several times, these people left me with quite literally no help. So I decided to maliciously comply by showing everybody just how impossible my task was. Here's what happened. So I used to work as a driver for a freight company, and we used to handle awkward-sized items that no other couriers would touch. We would deliver everything from coffins to tractor parts. We also had to collect things from our customers for delivery the next day. This company had a mixture of contractors and permanent drivers, and I was a relief driver. I knew most of the routes, so I covered holidays or sickness. The management of the depot consisted of a delivery manager and a collection manager. These two people didn't quite see eye to eye, as sometimes getting the stuff delivered conflicted with getting stuff collected, and their targets reflected failures in a bad way. This particular day, I had to cover a contractor's route, and I didn't know the route, so as we had to load our trucks, this took a little longer than usual. I had around 45 deliveries that day, which is predominantly high for this area. I asked my manager, who is the delivery manager, if he knew the route at all, and he replied that he did and ordered my route for me, so I was good to go, albeit a bit late. I did say that with the volume I had, I may struggle, and I asked him to keep an eye out for me, and he said okay. Well, I got to near midday, and I realized that I wasn't going to be able to complete all the deliveries, and the collections wouldn't get done either. I also noted that one of the collections was off route, and the contractor had a vehicle in that area anyways. I then called in and I spoke to my manager for the delivery side of things, and told him he had a choice of collections or deliveries. I also asked why the contractor couldn't cover the off-route collection, and I was told to call back later, and he'll see if something can be sorted out. He also said that the off-route collection would have to be done as well. I then called back later and I asked for help again, but he said there was no help available, so I gave him the option of deliveries or collections as there wasn't time to do both, but he categorically said that both had to be done. The delivery manager went home, so I called in again and I got the collection manager, and she just reiterated that there was no help at all, so either I fail the deliveries or fail the collections, and if that happened, I would have been hauled into the office the next day, so I decided to maliciously comply. I called into one of the collections and I asked what time they closed, and they told me 6:30 p.m., so I said I'd be back later, and I carried on with the deliveries, which only took me further away from that collection. At the appropriate time, I stopped delivering and I drove straight to collections, and I collected 2 small parcels and that was it. I then drove back to where I had stopped and carried on delivering, and this cost me maybe about an hour. I finished my last delivery at 7:15 p.m. and I had a 45-minute drive back to my yard. As I was leaving the round, I got a frantic call from the collection manager. She was wondering where I was at, but I told her what happened, and I told her that I'd asked for help 4 times and I was told I had to do everything allocated to me. So I did, and it wasn't my fault that it happened like this. Well, here's where the real trouble started. The company's trunking company is a fluid one, and it depends on trucks leaving the depot at a certain time. For our depot, the cutoff time was 7:30 p.m., and I wheeled in at just about 8 o'clock p.m. So there were 15 pissed off guys on overtime, all waiting for me to turn up, and an articulated truck waiting for these 2 parcels. This wait caused the whole trunking company to be late the next day. My routing was discussed when I got back, as it was questionable acceptable at best. And when I told the collections manager that it was the delivery manager that organized it, there was a massive blow up. There were angry emails between the delivery and collection managers, and I would imagine that the logistics team would have demanded an explanation too. So basically, many butts were kicked. The next day, no one said a word. I wasn't on that route, and going forward, at least for a little bit, they either helped out when I asked, or they just didn't get me to do as much at all. Also, as I had exceeded legal driving time, they had to make sure that I went home early for a few days, so that was a bit of a win there. The biggest trouble these guys had was that they always assumed that the drivers were after an easy day, and even when presented with the evidence, they assumed that you were still trying to fly by. But thankfully, this time bit them in the butt incredibly badly. Wow, I can't stand managers who act like this, who seriously try to be like, oh yeah, you're just trying to get out of working. But it's like, no, genius, I literally can't finish the job you gave me. You gave me an impossible task, and this is not my problem. So I just love the fact that the original poster maliciously complied and basically said, oh, okay, you're gonna give me something impossible to do? Congratulations, I'm coming back to work late. And the fact that this put everybody behind is just so funny to me, because this literally is the consequences of your manager's decisions. Because if they were just a little bit more reasonable, all of this quite literally could have been avoided. An entitled bully ruins my birthday party by forcing me and my friends to follow his every command. But once things started catching on fire and really getting out of hand, my birthday party very quickly was canceled. Here's what happened. Okay, to set the scene, it was my 8th birthday, and it was my first birthday in our new house. It was the early 70s, and my parents were first-time homeowners, and they wanted my first birthday in the new house to be one that I always would remember. So they decided to throw a birthday party for me, inviting my cousins and all the neighborhood kids as well. A few of my aunts, one of my grandmothers, and a few neighborhood moms were there too. All the kids were down in the basement with no grown-ups to supervise, and one of the kids had an older brother who was there as well. He was put in charge by the grown-ups, and we were sternly told by the grown-ups that the older brother, who we will call Jeff, was the person in charge, and we were to follow Jeff's orders when there were no adults downstairs with us. Jeff was much bigger than the rest of us, and as soon as the grown-ups were out of the room, he would start bullying the younger kids, making us do all sorts of mischief, or else he would punch us. He would tell us to do something, and if we said no, he would make this great fist in front of your face. And to us younger kids, it looked like the fist from the Incredible Hulk. He had us saying swear words whenever an adult would come down the stairs, and he wrote swear words on the cement walls with chalk and made other kids take the blame. We were all given paper cups, and he made all of us hold out our paper cups and then used a dart to poke several holes in the bottom of each kid's cup. My mother and aunt came downstairs and said, okay kids, who want some Kool-Aid? And not sensing the normal enthusiasm that a bunch of 6 to 8-year-olds would normally have for Kool-Aid, my mother thought that something was wrong, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. She looked at our blank faces for a moment and said, oh, for God's sakes, hold out your cups, it's red Kool-Aid for crying out loud. This is everybody's favorite. Well, hesitantly, we held out our cups. My mother comes over to the first kid, raises the clear glass pitcher of red Kool-Aid, and starts to pour. Well, the Kool-Aid went straight in the cup, then out the bottom through the dart-punched holes, like a lawn sprinkler with red dye in the water. There was red Kool-Aid everywhere, on the table cover, all over the floor, on the kid, and on my mother. The older kid then howled with laughter as my mother scolded the poor helpless kid standing there with Kool-Aid stained pants and a formerly white t-shirt that most definitely would never be any shade of white ever again. My mother then said, Lord Almighty above, why would you do such a thing? She then moved on to the next kid, and wouldn't you guess it, the same thing happens. She then checked everyone else's cup, and everyone except for the big kid had holes in their cup. He slowly sipped and savored his Kool-Aid in front of the rest of our jealous eyes, like it was sweet nectar being sipped from a holy chalice. My mother and aunt stormed back upstairs and came down a few minutes later with hot dogs, their footsteps sounding like peeling Velcro as they stepped into the many sticky, dried red Kool-Aid puddles lying around the floor like a sinister minefield. Then they went back upstairs only to come rushing back down a few moments later after they overheard a chaos that had erupted downstairs. When they got downstairs to see what the commotion was about, it looked as if there was an explosion in a condiment factory, as the walls, floor, and ceiling had become a canvas for a condiment mosaic. And that's when the food fight had broken out, which is something that Jeff had ordered us to do. My mother and aunt issued the riot act and gave us our final warning, as the older kid they put in charge stood innocently in the corner with an evil smirk on his face. Well, back upstairs they went, and they came downstairs a few minutes later with the birthday cake and placed it on the table with very stern looks on their faces. They were not going to put up with the slightest hint of foolishness. They were absolutely done. Well, we took the visual hint and put on our best behavior as we made our way in an orderly fashion to the wretched-looking table that had Kool-Aid stains and condiment smears so that we could try and get a piece of cake. We sat there and ate our cake, and behaved very well while we were doing so. My mother and aunt then went back upstairs and left us alone again, but this time someone lit the table on fire. Well, my mother and aunt came roaring down the stairs again, telling everyone to get out and go home, as they became volunteer firefighters in that moment. And as you can probably guess, that was the last ever birthday party for me that my parents held at my house. Wow, what a crazy circumstance. Like seriously, Jeff is one of those bad kids that should not have been in charge. And I feel really bad for you and your friends, because I'm sure that none of you wanted this. You definitely just wanted to have like a normal birthday party and spend time with your friends, but here comes Jeff literally lighting the house on fire. Like, that kid is seriously insane. That is not okay. You can't just light the table on fire in the middle of a birthday party. Not to mention the Kool-Aid incident and them having a food fight. Like, for me, if I was the mom or the aunt in this situation, the food fight and the Kool-Aid incident would have been like my last straw. There's no way I would put up with that, like not for a second. So hopefully you didn't have any more interactions with Jeff growing up, because that guy sounds like a nightmare, and I'm willing to bet that the older Jeff got, the worse he probably was. Am I the jerk for pressing charges against my sister after she stole over $1,500 from my bank account? Because right now my parents are furious with me, saying that they could have paid it back if I just gave them time. Here's what happened. I'm a 24-year-old female, and my 26-year-old sister called me and asked if she could stay with me for the week, as she said that she missed me and we were both free. And when she asked this, I did say yes because I missed her as well. We're both college students, and she's in her final year, and I'm in my second year, and we live in different states. My sister came down and slept on my couch, as I have a one-bedroom apartment. Monday and Tuesday was great. We went out together, did some shopping, and had some sisterly time. Wednesday came along and I had to go to work, and so I asked her if she's alright staying in the apartment by herself, and she said yes. While on my lunch break, I was searching for my credit card. My backpack has a specific section that's hidden away where I put my valuables in, such as my cell phone, my wallet, or my keys. I searched and my wallet wasn't there. I texted my sister and I asked if she had seen my wallet, and she replied no and said that she'd look for it. I do have Apple Pay, so I still can purchase some lunch. I got home and she said she found it on top of my sock drawer, and I was suspicious as I went in there yesterday morning and I knew it wasn't there. When I got home, I logged into my online banking and I saw that over $1,500 had been withdrawn across 2 accounts. I had strong suspicions that it was my sister, and I told her that I'm calling the police as someone's withdrawn money from my accounts. Well, it didn't take long for her to confess that she took my wallet and used my money. Now, it's important to know that my sister is a golden child who never is in trouble. I was sick and tired of her getting away with everything, and not only that, but it's money that I can't afford to lose. I told her that I'm calling the police and that I want to press charges, but my sister kept crying and screaming and begging to not call the police, as she said she would have my money in 24 hours time. Now, as I was speaking to the dispatcher on the phone, my sister was trying to grab the phone from my hand. After she failed to do so, she ran to my room, called our parents, and whilst I was on the phone to 911, my parents were constantly trying to call me. As soon as I hanged up, within 1 second, they called me back, and the dispatcher said they were sending police officers to my address. As I hung up and waited for the dispatcher to arrive, I saw 30 missed calls from my parents, so I decided to turn my phone off all the way up until the officer got here, as they just kept calling me. The police officer arrived and detained my sister. They took down my statement and I showed them my evidence, and they said because she stole over $1,500 that this is considered a felony and they will be charging her. I then called my parents afterwards and I explained the situation, and once I did, they started shouting at me down the phone, telling me that I shouldn't have called the police as they would have just paid it back within an hour, and that I've ruined her life. So honestly, I really need to know, am I the jerk for calling the police on my sister after she blatantly stole money from me? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk, and I cannot believe that your parents are acting that way. Let's get a few things straight. You did not ruin your sister's life. She quite literally ruined hers. She's the one that stole money out of your wallet and not the other way around. Like, how can anyone possibly defend this? There is no good excuse for that, and I am sincerely appalled that your parents are like, wait, don't do this, you're gonna ruin her life. And it's like, wait a second, you're not even mad that she stole money from me, but instead you're just going to enable this behavior? Like, seriously, what's going on here? This is not okay. Because I don't care who you are, you can't just take that kind of money from someone and not expect some kind of consequence. So the fact that your parents would try to flip this on you and be like, oh, this is your fault that she's gonna be in trouble, and basically imply that you're ruining her life is so unbelievably disrespectful, it's not even funny. And this also makes me believe that maybe this is the only reason your sister came to your apartment. Like, this was probably her plan the entire time. She didn't want to visit you, she just wanted a free moment away from you, you so that she could rob you blind. And the way your parents reacted makes them complicit in all of this, because I think it's the principle of the matter that really counts in this situation. This is not about you getting your money back as soon as possible. This is about your sister robbing you and your parents somehow being okay with it. So no, you're definitely not the jerk. Your parents are insane for trying to defend her, and in my opinion, I think your sister's getting exactly what she deserves. An entitled Karen demands that I do her job every morning at the hotel that we work at, claiming that if I didn't do exactly as she said, she would personally get me fired. But after I refused to give in to this stupid Karen's demands, this Karen actually tried to get me fired, only for her to get fired herself. And I've honestly never been happier to see somebody go in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so I had a coworker who we will call Bessie, who had been working at this hotel for 15 years as the breakfast attendant for the little buffet we have here. If you've ever been to a Holiday Inn Express or a Best Western, then you have a very clear idea of what I'm talking about. In all of those years, Bessie has been able to bully every night auditor into doing half the breakfast setup before she arrives. Bessie had them setting out or refilling cold and dry food, as well as condiments, plates, plasticware, and all sorts of other stuff at 3 in the morning. If it wasn't all done when she came in at 4, there would be all sorts of yelling, screaming, and threats of being fired. She had convinced the 22-year-olds working overnight that she had that control when she didn't even manage her department. It was the sales manager that did the breakfast scheduling and ordering, and the houseman was in charge of taking out the kitchen trash. So Bessie only had to do half of her actual job on any given morning. Well, that is until I showed up. The management company that owns the hotel hired me to run night audit at 2 of their locations. And at no other hotel I've ever worked at in the last 19 years had night audits doing anything like this. Most brands would have night audits make new coffee during the shift and maybe put out any of the breakfast to-go bags. So I just run it like any other night audit, and I just make new coffee at 3 in the morning. When Bessie came in, she tried telling me all the stuff I was supposed to do, but I told her that none of that makes any sense. Leaving food out for 3 hours before breakfast is hazardous. So is turning on the waffle irons and oven. It's just energy waste and fire hazards all over. Bessie then tells me that I'm being too smart and I need to watch my tone speaking to elders. After that morning when Bessie comes in, she throws her tantrum screaming about how lazy young people are and how nobody wants to work these days. Like she's just walking around the breakfast pantry and buffet screaming about me as she does her own job. Meanwhile, another coworker who we will call Melanie that covers Bessie on the weekend has absolutely no problem with how I operate. She says that none of Bessie's rules make sense to her at all either. For 3 weeks, this goes on before Bessie decides to involve the hotel manager. And she was all talk about how she knows him, she's been here longer than anybody else, and how she's gonna get me fired. Well, this is where my first-hand knowledge ends, and I start working off triple verified gossip. On Tuesday morning, Bessie started making demands of the general manager. She said stuff like, either he stays or I go. And this was her opening riff, but this guy basically said that's not going to happen. So he counters by saying that if she can't handle breakfast anymore, then she can move to housekeeping or laundry. Well, apparently this sent Bessie into a rage because she yelled and then started crying before walking out. Then she returned an hour later more composed, speaking to the hotel manager behind closed doors, and then she left crying again. Well, tonight when I clocked in, Bessie was off the schedule. Melanie was on all week for breakfast, and the second shift told me that Bessie was fired. So honestly, farewell to Bessie, because trust me, you will not be missed. Yeah, that's a really funny way of being not only incredibly entitled, but also super selfish. Who in their right mind would try to lie to their coworkers and be like, oh yeah, I could get you fired if you don't do my job? And that's all that's going on here, by the way. This lady's too lazy to do her own job, so she's like, oh, I'm gonna make you do my job or else you're gonna get fired. I have the power to do that. And that is such a toxic thing to say. Like seriously, in my opinion, if anybody that you work with makes that kind of veiled threat, where they're basically putting your employment on the line, then in my opinion, it's time to go to HR or it's time to find another job. Because that is definitely not a place you want to work. Because either they really can fire you, or this is one of those situations where like they're just making it up and they're trying to use fear tactics to keep you in line. And that is such a ridiculous thing to do. So truly, good for you for standing up for yourself and refusing to give in to this stupid idiot's demands. Because her awful attitude and her selfish demeanor quite literally is the reason she got fired. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled aunt, whom I have barely spoken to in the last 20 years, demanded that my sister and I use our inheritance to buy her a house. And I'm honestly still amazed by this level of entitlement. Here's what happened. Okay, so I had to suffer through a holiday recently with my aunt, and I only put up with her presence so I could get to know my cousin better, and this made me annoyed all over again about something she did a few years ago. Now, my mom passed away from depression back in 2020, if you know what I mean. As a consequence of this, my sister and I received a large inheritance from our grandfather's estate, and this was enough money to buy a house, and my dad sorted out the details of the taxes we had to pay on the inheritance for us. We offered him a third share to take care of himself, but he stated that he didn't want to touch the money. Now, the aunt in question who I went on holiday with, we'll call her Rachel for the sake of the story, she is an avid socialist, while the other aunt, who we will call Tilly, has led a hippie lifestyle for decades. They're both in their 60s and they are my dad's sisters. Because of their chosen lifestyles, they don't have much in the way of savings, but they are adults. They chose their lifestyle and they have to live with the consequences of that. A year or two after my mother passed away, Tilly had some sort of crisis where her rent increased and she wasn't sure how she would be able to afford her place or her accommodations. And I'm not really sure of all the details, but what I do know is that Rachel, my other aunt, reached out to my dad with a suggestion that we use our inheritance, which we inherited from the other side of my family, so that we could buy Tilly a house, which she would then leave to us in her will, meaning that I would have to wait until my middle age to get access to my own money to buy a house with. And this is also a person we've barely spoken to in the last 20 years. The audacity of this was absolutely amazing, and this made the holiday even more annoying, as I feel certain that their attempts to get closer to us have partly to do with our money. Rachel's behavior on the holiday was also pretty irritating, as she was asking inappropriately personal questions, acting incredibly childish, and so many other things. And this also set my sister and I to start arguing as well. And so, with all things considered, we are 100% never going on a holiday with her ever again. Yeah, that is absolutely ridiculous, and it's why, in my opinion, you never tell anybody about your money. Like, this is one of those circumstances where it sounds like everybody knew about it, but seriously, people like this who are like, oh, just buy a house for your aunt you never talked to. Like, that is crazy to me, and that is so intrusive. Just because you might have the money doesn't mean everyone else is obligated to it. You are not everyone else's personal ATM machine. Like, that is not how this works. So yeah, if I was in your shoes, I would never go back on a holiday with them ever again, because their behavior was absolutely atrocious. Am I the jerk for not allowing my grandparents to bring an estranged sibling to my wedding whom I have never met before in my life? Here's what happened. I'm a 26-year-old male, and I was raised by my dad after my mom became a deadbeat and walked out on us when I was born. She had zero to do with me from the time she left when I was a week old. No child support, no calls, didn't even check with her parents to see if I was okay. Her parents, who are my grandparents, were present throughout my life, but they weren't always people that I was close to. And this had to do with them bringing up my mother, even though they knew that it upset me and frustrated me. They wanted me to keep an open mind that she'd grow up one day and would hopefully regret leaving me. Even when I told them that I didn't want to hear about her, there were occasions that they mentioned her. After about 3 years, she reached back out to them, and they were excited, and they hoped that I would join them in reuniting with her. But I have as much interest now as I did back when I was a kid, which is zero for those who are wondering. They told me she had a daughter who was 4 years old at the time, and I told them that did not change anything for me. They told me, well, she's your mom, and I replied back that she is their daughter, and their daughter was no parent to me. I told them that she had not cared about me for 23 years, and we weren't going to pretend she suddenly started to care. I then had to take a small break from my grandparents because they mentioned that my mom had lost an infant son not too long before reaching out, and that it was what ultimately made her decide to reconnect. After 3 months, my grandparents apologized for pressuring me, and they said they would no longer push it, and it really looked like they were going to stay true to their word. However, they revealed that they had not been entirely true to their word, and they were telling their granddaughter about me, and promised her a relationship with me, and made her believe that she could come to my wedding. And they told me this after I sent them an invite to my wedding, and they realized that they as a couple didn't get a +1. I told them that I didn't want the girl attending my wedding, and I said that I would actually want to meet her first and figure out contact through them if I was actually interested, but guess what? I'm not. They argue that she's still a sibling, and I could have a relationship with her through them, and that there is no reason to even have contact with my mother. But I told them that I don't want contact with this child. I told them she might be biologically my sibling, but in terms of being my family, she's not, and I have zero desire to change that. They again said that she's my sibling, and I have no others, and I would be helping to break her heart. But I very clearly said that I'm not letting them bring their daughter's other child to my wedding just because they messed up and made promises that they had no right to make. I told them that they would have to fix it, but she was not coming just to spare her feelings, because because it will be a lot if she comes face to face with me and can see how disinterested I am in her. Well, they told me to think of the child and how my words were so distancing instead of kind and inclusive. So am I the jerk for not wanting this kid to show up to my wedding? What should I do? No, you are not the jerk at all. Your grandparents are crossing a line and there is no good excuse for that. They're literally bringing in a sibling to your wedding of all places, and you haven't even met this person and you probably don't even know their name. Like, there's no family connection here. You have it 100% right. And the fact that your grandparents were like, oh yeah, you're gonna have a great relationship with the original poster, and for them to do that at your wedding of all places is just insane to me. So no, you are definitely not the jerk. The way your grandparents acted is completely out of line, and in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would be reconsidering even having them in my wedding in the first place, because clearly they cannot be trusted. Am I the jerk for not consenting to my husband's twin brother moving in with us? Because after finding out he would need constant care, I feel that all my plans of having a family are completely thrown out the window. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. My husband and I got married less than a year ago. For most of our relationship, one of our biggest issues and cause of arguments has been his family. My husband has a large family, and if you include all of his half-siblings, he is one of 12 children. This includes his twin brother Sam, who has autism, with one of his younger brothers also having autism but is higher functioning. Previously, before we married, one of my husband's brothers moved in with us for about 8 months. I knew going into it that this was going to be temporary, so I said okay. However, I made clear then that his family members staying with us wasn't really ideal for me. Both of my husband's autistic brothers have spent most of their lives living with their grandfather. However, back in 2018, they decided it was no longer appropriate for Sam to live with their grandfather due to his high care needs. Sam moved in with their oldest sister and has lived there ever since. Sam is mostly nonverbal, and although he has some independent skills, he needs help with everyday things and shouldn't really be left home alone for more than an hour. My sister-in-law's youngest child left home early last year, and she's now planning to move in with her eldest son and her grandkids. And she can only do this if she can find a new home for Sam. Recently, my husband came to me and told me that he wanted Sam to move in with us. He argued that we have the space and he has the time to look after Sam. He thinks as Sam's twin, it's his duty to be the one to take Sam in. He also said that their sister is going to be spending a lot of time with Sam. Now, I feel bad, but I told him I didn't want Sam to live with us. This would be a long-term living arrangement and it would not be temporary like his other brother. I told him that he should have told me well before marriage that he would be wanting his brother to live with us. And so I feel because he didn't, it's my right to say no. This is a big change that will affect the rest of our foreseeable future and all of our future plans of starting a family. Fast forward, and yesterday, my husband and I were at my sister-in-law's home discussing Sam's future, and I told her I didn't want Sam to move in with us. I suggested to her that if she stayed in-house to look after Sam, my husband and I can try to be a bigger help to her. She then became annoyed with me after that and complained that she's been looking after her younger siblings since kindergarten, became a teen mom, and raised 7 kids of her own, and she can now finally have the time to do what she wants. I then expressed my opinion that she was being cold to Sam, who is incredibly attached to her, and that I could see him getting very depressed living away from her. Well, she got mad at me after that. Although my husband said he would only take Sam in with my consent, I can tell that he's going to hold it against me if I don't. So am I being the jerk here? I think they are being very short-sighted about Sam's future, and all the siblings have flat out refused him going into a home. What should I do? No, you are absolutely not the jerk. Your husband sucks, and so does the rest of his family. This sounds like one of those cases where yes, Sam absolutely needs professional help. Not saying that other people can't step up and take care of him, but that option is very clearly falling apart. So to that end, all of these people suck. They should have taken care of this a long time ago. And it's so funny to me that this sister-in-law is like, wow, you need to take him in. Like, she's not even giving you a choice almost. She's trying to like gaslight you and be like, well, now I could do whatever I want. Basically confirming that yes, this is a burden, and no, she's never going to visit Sam ever again. She is 100% going to drop him off at your house, and that's going to be the end of it. So in my opinion, I think you are completely justified in saying no, you are not taking him in. But also, the biggest red flag in my opinion is your husband. This guy kept you in the dark for your entire relationship and all throughout you getting married and getting ready to be married. Like, this guy completely pulled a fast one on you and said, oh yeah, I want my brother to move in. And by the way, my brother needs a lot of care, which all of that is fine. Like, legitimately, that is fine. This is what family does. But to spring that on your spouse without talking about this before you got married, in my opinion, is a massive red flag. Like, was he planning this from the very beginning? Did he know for like a long time that this was probably going to happen? Like, that's kind of what it seems like to me, and that is is so unfair for you. Like, I wouldn't even put it past him that he only had his brother move in for 8 months just so he could try to test the water to see if you would be okay with it. Like, all of this is super sketchy, and I don't blame you for being angry, because I know if I was in your shoes, I would feel the exact same way. An entitled Karen mouths off at a server working at a restaurant after she's told that there's going to be a 20-minute wait until they can finally see new customers. But as karma would have it, this server was not going to take that for a second, as this server kicked this lady out of the restaurant in a way that I've never seen before in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so I went to breakfast with a friend to celebrate their kids going back to school. We walk into the restaurant and are told their computers are down and only 2 servers are working just now, so everything is a bit slow. Apologies get thrown around, but eventually we just take a seat and we tell them that we're not in a rush and that they don't have to worry about us. And we just chat and eventually have a lovely leisurely breakfast. Well, as we're eating, I hear the staff telling folks coming in the same thing, that they're taking down credit card numbers because the computers are down, that their ordering system is down, and that they're understaffed. And they said, please be patient. We hope to have everything up running smoothly very soon. Now, most people are like us. They're not in a hurry. They're smiling and having a cup of coffee, and they're just taking it easy. Well, that all ends when the entitled Karen of this story walks in. Firstly, she had to wait about 2 minutes until somebody came up to try and help her out. And apparently that was enough to already put her in a mood. Either that or she's just perpetually pissed off. Because when the server came over to tell her the story, she also told her that it would be about 20 minutes until they can seat her, as they've got all that they can handle right now. Well, this entitled Karen jumps down this poor server's throat. She starts screaming, "No, there is not a 20-minute wait. There are plenty of tables open." And then the funniest thing happens that I honestly never expected. I kid you not. The server blinked, looked at this woman, took a breath and said, "You know what? You're right. We are actually closed. Thank you. Have a good day now." And then she shooed the woman around and out the door. And you know what? I nearly cheered out loud. She told the old gentleman who came up to work the seating booth to tell anyone else that they were closed for the next little bit until they could catch up or get the systems running again. And honestly, my friend and I just smile throughout the rest of our meal because I absolutely love a side of karma with my eggs and coffee in the morning. That is honestly such a great way to handle some stupid entitled Karen, or literally anybody who acts that way. Like, just because there's tables open at a restaurant doesn't mean they can accommodate you at the drop of a hat. That is so obnoxious and incredibly rude. And it's also really amazing to me that someone would have the actual guts to talk to some staff like that. You do know these people are serving you food, right? They can also turn you away at the door and just be like, "Okay, you gotta go," which is exactly what this server did. Like, that is such a smart thing to do. And with all things considered, I'm kind of surprised they didn't do that sooner. I mean, your systems are down and you can barely function as a restaurant at the moment. Like, even running all those credit cards later on when your computers are back up, that's gonna take well over 3 hours just to get it all sorted out, if not longer. So good for the server for standing up for themselves and getting rid of this weird entitled Karen, because you know for a fact that if she got seated, she absolutely would have caused problems. An entitled old jerk has a meltdown in Chipotle after he started viciously screaming at a child who was making too much noise. And I'm honestly still blown away by how angry this guy got. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened several weeks ago at my local Chipotle. I'm in line and I had just begun to order, and I vaguely hear a toddler in the dining room, and a quick glance places this kid at about 18 months old. And then suddenly I hear this huge commotion, and as I look over, this old entitled jerk starts screaming over and over again that this kid needs to shut up. And he screams the phrase "shut her up" over and over again, like maybe 15 times. And I'm honestly shocked that a grown man is behaving like this. An employee, who I can only assume is the manager, is trying to calm him down. I can't hear what she's saying, but the old man is screaming, wondering why no one's telling the child to be quiet. I remember then that I'm trying to order, so I just go on with my business. Really, the worst part was that the old man was sitting with what appeared to be his wife, and the look on her face will forever haunt my dreams for years to come. She sat there very still and very quiet. She appeared to not really be aware of her surroundings. She just looked off into space with the saddest look I've ever seen. This poor woman has probably been married to this wretched man for decades, and in a time when if you were married, you stayed married no matter what. Now, for reference, the little girl in question was not screaming, maybe just talking a little bit above normal levels. And yes, of course, many assumptions were made because this was a 3-minute snapshot into their lives. But I'm honestly still blown away by this guy's behavior, as well as the fact that this guy would make this much of a scene. It is crazy to me that people can act like this and not get kicked out of a restaurant. Like, seriously, where's like the backbone on this manager? It doesn't take much to stand up and be like, "Okay, sir, you gotta go." Like, a crying baby is literally the last thing on our minds, sense, because this guy is literally screaming over and over again, shut her up. Like, the kid is what, 18 months old? Like, seriously, it's not that big of a deal. And the original poster even clarified that the kid was not even being that loud. Like, maybe being just a little bit loud considering like the environment, but I'm willing to bet that other people were being loud too, like it wasn't just this one baby. It really seems like this old guy just said, okay, there's a baby screaming, I don't like that. So my only solution to get peace and quiet is to scream louder. Like, okay, buddy, sure, that's the answer. Like, what is that guy thinking? That's not gonna solve a single thing. And you know what? After the description of the woman in the story, I also feel bad for this guy's wife. Like, just imagine being with someone who is this comfortable making this much of a scene in public. I would personally be horrified if I had someone like that in my life, because when I eat out, I just want to sit in peace and not have to deal with anybody, let alone have some kind of confrontation in public. Like, good lord. Because this guy's behavior was absolutely unacceptable. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.